Somewhere beneath layers of dust and silence, history is hiding something it never meant us to see. Forgotten cities lie buried beneath shifting sands. Messages carved in stone whisper in languages no one can understand. Entire expeditions vanish, leaving behind only questions and a silence that feels deliberate. Who built what should have been impossible? What was seen, then erased? And why do discoveries unsettle those who uncover them? Tonight, we step into the shadows of the past. For 3 hours, follow the clues, and decide what history may be trying to hide. Let's begin. High in the rugged, windswept peaks of the San Pedro Mountains, where the air thins and the landscape stretches in jagged shadows beneath an endless sky, lies a secret that has puzzled researchers for decades. Amid the sparse brush and the exposed sandstone cliffs, a figure rests, a mummy whose origins and nature have sparked debate and speculation in equal measure. Its discovery was unassuming, almost accidental, yet the implications of this preserved body have echoed far beyond the remote canyons where it was first uncovered. The mummy, small in stature but unnervingly intact, presents features that defy easy classification. Its elongated skull, delicate hands, and unusually proportioned limbs have invited immediate comparison to the remains of ancient humans from the region. Carbon dating places the mummy in a time frame overlapping with the early human settlements of the Southwest, roughly 900 BC to 1 AD, though even these initial findings leave as many questions as answers. Who were the people who lived here, and what circumstances led to such extraordinary preservation in this harsh environment? Historical records confirm that the San Pedro Mountains were once traversed by nomadic tribes, hunting and foraging amid the high desert plateaus. Archaeologists have catalogued pottery shards, stone tools, and remnants of rudimentary dwellings, all consistent with known ancient cultures. Yet, the mummy seems, in some aspects, to fall outside these conventional patterns. The skull, in particular, shows signs of cranial elongation, not uncommon in some ancient societies, but the degree here is extreme, leading some to wonder whether this was a cultural practice or something else entirely. Photographs and scans reveal another puzzling element. The preservation is uniform, as if the mummy had been treated with some unknown chemical or ritualistic method long lost to history. The skin is leathery but remarkably intact, the joints articulated as if poised to rise. How could natural mummification occur with such consistency in an environment subject to temperature swings from freezing nights to scorching days? Scientists have run tests on mineral deposits surrounding the remains, and while some suggest that mineral-rich soils may have contributed, the anomaly persists. Adding to the intrigue is the context of its discovery. The cave where the mummy was found had no other human remains nearby, no burial artifacts, no clear ritual markers. Some researchers suggest this may have been a solitary interment, a deliberate act by a culture whose practices are largely unknown to us. Others have proposed that the site could have been used for more esoteric purposes, shelter, refuge, or even as a ceremonial location lost to time. Then there are the more speculative interpretations, which cannot be dismissed entirely. Fringe theorists point to the proportions of the limbs and skull, the absence of parallel remains, and the pristine state of preservation as evidence of something outside ordinary human history. Could this be a member of an unknown population? Or might the mummy represent a unique developmental anomaly? In the shadows of the canyon, where the wind whistles through the crevices and the sun slants low, the questions multiply faster than the answers. Even mapping the mummy within the larger currents of ancient history raises puzzles. Trade routes and migrations in the Southwest, and connections stretching as far as Mesoamerica, hint at a world more interconnected than previously thought. Could distant cultural practices have influenced this isolated highland site? Or does the mummy represent a singular story, a silent witness to events that left no other trace? As the San Pedro Mountains continue to guard their secrets, the mummy remains a quiet enigma. Researchers return season after season, documenting, scanning, and speculating, yet the essential mystery endures. Who or what lies beneath the folds of leathered skin and elongated bone? And more importantly, what does it tell us about the peoples of this ancient land and the stories that have yet to be uncovered? The answers remain elusive, suspended in the thin mountain air, leaving only a profound, lingering question. What else might these high desert cliffs still conceal? As we leave the quiet canyons of the San Pedro Mountains, where winds whisper over ancient stone and secrets linger in shadow, our gaze shifts far beyond Earth, to a landscape both alien and strangely familiar. Millions of kilometers away, across the void of space, lies a region on Mars that has captivated astronomers, scientists, and dreamers alike. The Cydonia region. Here, among dunes and mesas etched by eons of wind and dust, a formation emerges that has sparked decades of speculation, the so-called face on Mars. Captured in 1976 by the Viking 1 orbiter, the formation initially appeared unmistakably humanoid, a mesa with shadows and contours that resemble eyes, a nose, and a mouth, gazing silently across the Martian plain. The images, grainy but compelling, ignited a wave of curiosity. How could a natural formation take on such a strikingly familiar shape? Was it a trick of light and perspective? A geological accident? Or something deliberately crafted by an intelligence long vanished from this world? Geologists point to a plausible explanation. The mesa is composed of sedimentary rock shaped over millennia by wind erosion, a process that can carve sharp ridges and shadowed hollows. Shadows, they argue, play across the uneven surface, and the brain instinctively interprets familiar patterns, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. Yet, despite this rational account, the formation continues to fascinate. High-resolution images from later orbiters, while showing less immediately face-like features, do not entirely erase the impression that some pattern, some order, lingers in the landscape. The surrounding Cydonia region only deepens the mystery. Scattered mesas and pyramidal structures appear with geometric regularity, as if they are part of a broader arrangement. Critics insist these are simply natural formations, shaped by wind, erosion, and sedimentary layering over millions of years. But others note alignments and proportions that seem too precise to be entirely random. Could Mars have hosted a civilization in its distant past, leaving behind faint, eroded traces of their presence? Or are we, once again, witnessing the human tendency to find meaning where none was intended? Adding to the intrigue are the accounts of amateur astronomers and planetary enthusiasts who have studied shadows at different times of day, noting how subtle changes in light can dramatically alter the appearance of the mesa. In some photographs, the face appears solemn, almost contemplative. In others, the features seem distorted or absent entirely. It is a reminder that our perception is shaped as much by the observer as by the object itself. Speculation ranges widely. Some researchers explore the possibility that the formations are remnants of ancient Martian engineering intended as markers or monuments. Others suggest they could be natural structures that coincidentally mirror shapes found on Earth, hinting at universal patterns in erosion and rock formation. Mainstream science leans toward natural explanations, yet the enduring fascination of the face on Mars suggests a deeper, almost archetypal resonance, a symbol that speaks to our innate desire to find companionship and history in the cosmos. As we peer across the dusty Martian plains, the mesa gazes back in silence, a sentinel in a world we are only beginning to explore. The Cydonia face endures not merely as a geological curiosity, but as an invitation to wonder. Could there be stories etched into distant worlds that we have yet to read? Or do these formations merely reflect our own search for meaning, a mirror of human imagination stretched across the red deserts of Mars? In either case, the mystery remains, a quiet, haunting question suspended in the thin Martian air. What else might lie hidden, waiting for the right eye to discover it? From the silent red plains of Mars, where the Cydonia face stirs questions about distant worlds and ancient traces of intelligence, we return to Earth, to a landscape no less extraordinary in its quiet enigma. Nestled in the lush, tropical heart of Bali, Indonesia, the Gunung Kawi rock shrines emerge from the river valley like monumental whispers of the past. Carved directly into cliff faces, these towering sanctuaries evoke both awe and puzzlement, a fusion of natural majesty and human craftsmanship that has stood for more than a millennium. Approaching the site, one is first struck by the sheer scale. The shrines, some over 7 meters tall, are sculpted into the volcanic tuff cliffs flanking the Pakarasan River, their forms recessed as if the rock itself had yielded to an unseen hand. Steps descend into the valley, lined with moss and shaded by frangipani and banyan trees, leading visitors closer to these stone monuments. The air is thick with humidity and the faint scent of incense, yet beneath this serene surface lies a deeper, quieter question. Who were the people who undertook such an immense labor, and why did they choose to carve directly into living rock? Archaeologists date the site to the 11th century A.D., within the era of the Balinese kingdoms, and attribute the shrines to funerary and commemorative purposes. The shrines are thought to honor members of the royal family, serving as both tombs and sacred spaces for meditation and offerings. Historical records suggest that Bali, during this period, was a hub of trade, culture, and spirituality, influenced by Hindu and Buddhist practices imported from India and the wider Indonesian archipelago. Yet, despite these contextual clues, Gunung Kawi defies full comprehension. The precision of the carvings is remarkable. Each shrine is aligned with an almost geometric regularity, their faces flush and corners crisp despite centuries of exposure to tropical rains and monsoon winds. The sheer effort required to chisel these monuments from hard volcanic tuff without modern tools raises profound questions about the technological capabilities and organizational sophistication of the era. How were these enormous blocks removed? How were they transported and shaped with such uniformity? And why does the site feel so carefully integrated with the natural topography, almost as if the cliffs themselves had been waiting to be sculpted? Equally compelling is the sense of symbolism embedded in the shrines. The vertical niches and stepped terraces suggest a cosmological or spiritual significance, perhaps echoing mountain worship or an earthly reflection of divine hierarchies. Some scholars suggest that the shrines were intentionally placed to mirror the natural flow of the Pakarasan River, linking life, death, and the sacred landscape in a continuous, almost mystical loop. Yet no inscription or definitive record explains the exact intent behind the carvings, leaving room for speculation about rituals, spiritual observances, or ceremonial functions that may now be lost to time. Local lore adds another layer of mystery. Legends tell of the shrines being carved overnight by unseen beings, or of kings whose devotion to their ancestors was so great that the rock itself seemed to bend to their will. While these stories cannot be verified, they reveal the enduring sense of wonder and reverence that the site inspires. A recognition that Gunung Kawi is more than a tomb or monument. It is a living testament to human imagination, devotion, and perhaps ambition. Some researchers have examined the shrines through a comparative lens, noting similarities to other megalithic and rock-cut sites across Southeast Asia, from Java's Dieng Plateau to Cambodia's Angkor Complex. Could these similarities indicate shared cultural knowledge, advanced engineering practices, or a common spiritual language across distant communities? Or is Gunung Kawi simply a singular marvel, a localized manifestation of creativity and religious devotion? The shrines also raise practical enigmas. Volcanic tuff is relatively soft compared to other rock types, yet the vertical faces and deep niches would have required careful planning to avoid collapse or fracturing. What techniques did the builders employ to ensure stability over centuries? Were there tools or methods that have since vanished from historical record? And perhaps most intriguingly, why did they choose this secluded valley, hidden among steep cliffs, rather than a more accessible location for royal commemoration? Even today, visitors descending the moss-covered steps sense a quiet power in the valley. The shrines looming above are at once intimate and imposing, suggesting both human ambition and the unknowable patience of the rock itself. Standing before them, it is difficult not to ponder the unseen laborers who shaped these cliffs, the spiritual intentions that guided each stroke of their tools, and the stories that may have been whispered here, now long forgotten. Gunung Kawi remains, in its stillness and solidity, a place of unanswered questions. It challenges us to consider the interplay between human intention and natural form, between devotion and endurance, between the known past and the unknown practices that gave rise to such enduring monuments. As the Pacarisan River flows silently below, we are left with a quiet, lingering thought. What secrets does the rock still hold? What truths, perhaps hidden in shadowed niches or eroded terraces, await those who would seek them with patient eyes and careful study? The valley keeps its mysteries close, reminding us that history is not only written in books, but etched in stone, waiting for discovery. From the cliffside sanctuaries of Bali, where human hands carved devotion into living rock, we turn now to another landscape shaped by human ingenuity and imagination. The heart of an ancient city that seems almost impossibly precise for its time. Stretching across the waters of Lake Texcoco, the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan rises vividly in memory, even centuries after its fall. Yet, it is not the city itself that draws our attention here, but a remarkable artifact, a map meticulously drawn, offering a window into a world both highly organized and subtly enigmatic. The map of Tenochtitlan, created in the early 16th century by indigenous scribes, is more than a record of streets and canals. It is a living document, capturing the city as it existed before the Spanish conquest. Canals branch outward like veins, connecting marketplaces, temples, and causeways to the surrounding lake. Squares are punctuated with temples and plazas, and the central precinct rises with temples whose exact dimensions remain a subject of debate. The map is both practical and symbolic, a guide for inhabitants and a declaration of cosmic order, reflecting the Aztec understanding of their place in the universe. Historians emphasize that Tenochtitlan was extraordinary in scale and sophistication. Constructed on a series of artificial islands, the city supported tens of thousands of residents, with aqueducts bringing fresh water, canals enabling transport, and causeways linking it to the mainland. The map captures all this in intricate detail, using iconography and scale that often surpasses European representations of urban centers of the same period. And yet, for all its precision, it leaves us with unanswered questions. How did the city's planners manage such complexity, creating not only functional infrastructure, but a spiritual and symbolic cityscape that aligned with celestial observations? Some details of the map are particularly puzzling. Certain structures are drawn with proportions and placements that, to modern eyes, seem almost too exact or even intentionally cryptic. Temples are positioned along axes that may correspond to solstices or astronomical events, hinting at a deeper cosmological knowledge embedded in urban design. Could these alignments have been purely practical, ensuring sun and wind patterns optimized daily life? Or were they designed to encode knowledge or rituals, accessible only to priests and rulers? The map also raises questions about the extent of historical accuracy versus interpretive representation. Unlike modern cartography, the map does not adhere strictly to scale or north orientation. Instead, it combines symbolic emphasis with functional depiction, highlighting sacred precincts, marketplaces, and causeways. Some scholars have suggested that the map served a dual purpose, as a practical guide and as a record of power, emphasizing the dominance of the ruling elite. Others wonder if there are elements we have yet to decipher, markers or symbols whose meaning has been lost, potentially revealing aspects of Aztec knowledge that survive only in these carefully drawn images. Beyond the technical questions, there is the mystery of the map's survival. Many codices and maps were destroyed or altered during the Spanish conquest, yet this particular rendering has endured, its colors and lines remarkably intact. What choices were made to preserve it? Was it hidden, copied, or guarded by those who understood its significance? And could its survival indicate a broader effort to safeguard knowledge of a city that would otherwise vanish beneath conquest and time? Some theorists have taken the map into more speculative territory. They point to unusual markings, clusters of symbols near the lake edges, or subtle variations in canal width, as potential evidence of knowledge or technologies that were otherwise undocumented. Could the city have incorporated engineering or hydrological practices we do not yet fully understand? Or are these features merely artistic flourishes, misunderstood by later observers unfamiliar with indigenous methods of cartography and representation? Looking at the map today, one cannot help but feel the city breathing beneath the paper, its causeways and canals still flowing, its temples casting shadows across the lake. Tenochtitlan was not simply a place of bricks and stone, it was a living network of ritual, commerce, and governance, and this map offers a rare glimpse into its rhythm and structure. It reminds us that human societies have always sought to impose order on chaos, to make sense of their world, and to encode meaning in ways that endure beyond the lifespan of their creators. And yet, questions remain. Why are certain areas emphasized more than others? Do hidden symbols point to knowledge lost with the fall of the Aztec Empire? Could there be layers of information embedded in the map that modern eyes cannot yet perceive, waiting for careful study to unlock their significance? As we trace the lines of causeways, canals, and sacred precincts, we are left with the same quiet wonder that accompanies every encounter with human history, that even the most carefully documented civilization holds secrets we may never fully uncover, and that some mysteries, no matter how meticulously recorded, remain suspended between memory and imagination. From the meticulously mapped canals and causeways of Tenochtitlan, where human ingenuity transformed an island city into a marvel of planning and ritual, we now travel northward, to a coastline where nature itself appears to have undertaken an extraordinary act of construction. Along the rugged shores of County Antrim in Northern Ireland, the Giant's Causeway stretches like a labyrinth of stone columns, descending into the sea with a quiet, geometric rhythm that has captivated observers for centuries. At first glance, the sight is mesmerizing. Tens of thousands of polygonal basalt columns, most hexagonal in shape, interlock like a vast natural pavement. Some rise several meters above the ground, forming steps that lead toward the waves, while others lie scattered, partially submerged, their edges worn smooth by wind and tide. The columns' precise angles and the almost modular consistency of their shapes give the impression of deliberate design, yet they emerge from volcanic rock that cooled tens of millions of years ago. How did nature, left to its own devices, create a formation so orderly and symmetrical that it seems almost architectural? Scientific studies offer explanations rooted in geology. Around 50 to 60 million years ago, during the Paleogene period, intense volcanic activity in the region forced molten basalt through fissures in the earth. As the lava cooled, it contracted and cracked, forming the polygonal shapes that we see today. From this perspective, the Giant's Causeway is a marvel of natural physics, a testament to the precision with which rock can fracture under stress. The sheer scale, however, continues to invite curiosity. How did such a vast expanse of columns form with such consistency? And why does the pattern extend so far inland, seamlessly linking stone and soil, rock and ocean? Beyond the scientific explanation, the site has long inspired legend and folklore. According to Irish mythology, the columns are the remnants of a causeway built by the giant Finn McCool, who supposedly constructed it to cross the North Channel to challenge a Scottish rival. Stories tell of Finn's clever escape and the mysterious breaking of the stones, leaving the causeway in fragments scattered across the waters. While these tales are symbolic rather than literal, they reflect a human desire to interpret the extraordinary, to attribute intention and narrative to formations that defy ordinary comprehension. Some researchers have noted patterns within the columns that suggest variations beyond simple hexagonal geometry. While most are six-sided, others have 5 or 7 sides, and subtle differences in height and orientation create irregular rhythms within the overall regularity. Could these irregularities have meaning, or are they purely incidental, the product of slight variations in cooling and contraction? Observers have long remarked that from certain angles, the steps of basalt seem almost designed for walking or ceremonial use, prompting speculation about whether early humans might have recognized and incorporated the formation into ritual or daily life. The coastal setting adds another layer of intrigue. The Atlantic waves crash relentlessly against the columns, eroding edges and polishing surfaces, creating a dynamic interplay between permanence and change. How long has this interaction been occurring, and what might future generations see as the causeway continues to evolve under the elements? Could there be hidden fissures or subterranean extensions yet to be discovered, revealing new facets of this already extraordinary site? Some fringe theorists have taken a more speculative approach, suggesting that the causeway's regularity and apparent design hint at lost knowledge, ancient engineering, or even extraterrestrial influence. While mainstream science does not support these ideas, the enduring fascination they inspire highlights the human need to find patterns, purpose, and story within nature's remarkable structures. Could it be that, like the Cydonia face or the mapped precision of Tenochtitlan, the Giant's Causeway exists at the intersection of natural law and human imagination, a place where mystery endures even amid explanation? Standing on the stones themselves, one feels a profound sense of both scale and intimacy. Each column bears the imprint of deep time, yet also invites interaction, a tactile connection with a process that predates humanity by tens of millions of years. It is as if the earth itself has written a message in basalt, one we are only beginning to read. Steps lead toward the horizon where sea and sky converge, and the mind cannot help but wonder. What stories were carried by the tides? What secrets might lie in the fissures and gaps, hidden beneath centuries of moss and wave-worn stone? The Giant's Causeway reminds us that mystery need not always be hidden beneath layers of human history or across distant planets. Sometimes, it lies in plain view, etched by fire and water into the very crust of the earth, inviting us to wonder, to contemplate, and to recognize that even the most natural of formations can inspire awe and curiosity. And so, as we trace the interlocking polygons with our eyes and fingertips, a simple yet profound question remains. What more does the earth hold, waiting for patient observation to reveal the next marvel that challenges our understanding of time, shape, and possibility? The Giant's Causeway. From the basalt columns of the Giant's Causeway, sculpted over millions of years by fire and water, we turn now to a human story frozen in time, buried beneath layers of ash, yet preserved with astonishing clarity. In the ancient city of Herculaneum, shadowed by the looming presence of Mount Vesuvius, lie the remnants of a world lost in an instant. A city swallowed by volcanic fury in 79 AD. Among the ruins, a remarkable discovery continues to captivate scholars and historians. The Herculaneum Papyri, scrolls carbonized but intact, whispering secrets from the past that modern eyes are still struggling to read. The papyri were found in the 18th century, hidden in the Villa of the Papyri, a sprawling residence believed to have belonged to a wealthy Roman family, perhaps even linked to Julius Caesar's circle. Thousands of scrolls had been stacked in what appear to be libraries, preserved almost miraculously under the volcanic ash and intense heat. The surfaces of these scrolls are blackened, brittle, and fragile, yet the texts, painstakingly inscribed in Greek and Latin, survive in legible fragments. Each scroll is a portal to a world that, for centuries, existed only in shadows, philosophy, literature, and perhaps knowledge we have yet to fully comprehend. What is striking, beyond the mere survival of these documents, is the nature of their content. Many of the papyri appear to contain the writings of Philodemus, an Epicurean philosopher, offering reflections on ethics, poetry, and rhetoric. Yet even with modern imaging techniques, X-ray tomography, multispectral scanning, and digital unrolling, only a fraction of the scrolls has been deciphered. Could there be unknown works among these papyri, texts that vanished elsewhere, preserved only in the heat-hardened silence of Vesuvius's wrath? The possibility tantalizes scholars and fuels speculation. What thoughts, what ideas, might have been lost to history had the eruption not sealed them so definitively? The process of preservation itself is a puzzle. The volcanic pyroclastic flow that engulfed Herculaneum reached temperatures exceeding 400 degrees Celsius, incinerating most organic material while simultaneously carbonizing these scrolls. How, against such extreme heat, did the intricate ink markings survive at all? Were there conditions in the villa's architecture, walls, alcoves, or storage methods that created microenvironments protecting the scrolls from complete destruction? And if so, could similar hidden libraries exist elsewhere, awaiting discovery beneath the ruins of other ancient cities? The scrolls also carry mysteries in their physical structure. They are rolled tightly, sometimes with layers so compact that separating them without damage seems impossible. Scholars working on these fragile artifacts are essentially racing against time, balancing the need for access against the risk of losing these priceless documents forever. Could there be ways to read them non-invasively that might reveal texts we cannot yet perceive? Every new scanning technique seems to bring both answers and fresh questions, as unexpected patterns and markings emerge on the fragile surfaces. Some speculate that the content of the Herculaneum Papyri could challenge or expand our understanding of Roman thought. Could there be treatises on science, mathematics, or natural philosophy that predate or differ from what has survived in other texts? Might there be insights into cultural, political, or spiritual practices of the Roman elite, preserved only in these volcanic tombs? While the mainstream focus remains on philosophical writings, the gaps and missing scrolls, some perhaps destroyed in early attempts at unrolling, leave room for tantalizing possibilities. Even the arrangement of the scrolls is mysterious. They were not scattered randomly but stacked systematically, suggesting that the villa's owner was methodical, perhaps even obsessive, about preserving knowledge. Was this a personal library, a curated collection, or part of a wider intellectual network among Roman elites? And if such care was taken, what else might the villa have held? Documents, artifacts, or ideas that were lost to fire, ash, or the centuries that followed? Standing among the ruins of Herculaneum, With the coastline glimmering under a Mediterranean sun and Mount Vesuvius looming silently in the background, one feels the presence of those who lived, wrote, and perished here. The papyri are more than relics. They are voices across time, whispering fragments of thought, philosophy, and culture, preserved against all odds. And yet, for every passage read, for every philosophical treatise recovered, the sense of mystery deepens. The Herculaneum Papyri compel us to wonder not only about the knowledge they contain, but about the fragile intersection of human ambition, natural catastrophe, and time. How much remains hidden, waiting beneath ash and ruin, still unread, still unheard? Could entire branches of thought, lost works, forgotten teachings, be lying in wait, their contents locked within brittle scrolls? And as we continue to probe with ever more sophisticated tools, we are reminded that history is never fully known. It survives in fragments, in whispers, in mysteries like these, inviting us to question, to explore, and to imagine the richness of what might still be uncovered. From the fragile, ash-blackened scrolls of Herculaneum, where the eruption of Vesuvius preserved voices of a vanished world, we turn now to a monument of stone, a silent sentinel carved in the heart of the ancient Near East. Standing nearly 2 meters tall, the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III rises in the imagination as much as it does in historical record, a monolith of polished black limestone, inscribed with text and reliefs that speak of conquest, tribute, and the intertwining of power and memory. It is a relic both monumental and intimate, a story etched in stone, waiting for the patient eye to read between the lines. Discovered in 1846 in Nimrud, the capital of the Neo-Assyrian Empire in what is now northern Iraq, the obelisk is intricately carved on all 4 sides. The scenes depict foreign rulers bringing tribute to the Assyrian king Shalmaneser III, who reigned from 859 to 824 BC. Among these figures is one who has drawn extraordinary attention, a kneeling king presenting gifts, identified in the inscriptions as Jehu of the house of Omri, ruler of the land of Palestine. The relief is accompanied by cuneiform text, detailing the offerings and the subservience of distant lands to Assyrian power. Yet, even within these ostensibly straightforward records, questions linger, inviting inquiry into the nuances and gaps that history itself cannot fully explain. The obelisk is remarkable not only for its artistry, but for the clarity with which it documents international relations of the time. The figures are portrayed in hierarchical scale. The king looms larger than the visiting rulers, whose gestures and possessions reveal the rituals of tribute and submission. The inscriptions provide names, places, and goods, chronicling interactions that historians had previously known only through scattered textual references. But the artifact is more than a historical ledger. Its imagery, its composition, and the very choice of scenes suggest an intention beyond mere record-keeping. What messages were meant to endure through centuries, and what subtle narratives were embedded for those attuned to the symbols and hierarchies of the Assyrian court? Among the scholars, the depiction of Jehu has been a focal point of fascination. The obelisk portrays him bending low, offering silver, gold, and precious items to Shalmaneser III. This is considered one of the earliest contemporary visual references to a ruler of Palestine, offering a rare window into the political and cultural dynamics of the 9th century BC Levant. Yet questions arise. How accurately does the relief represent the political reality? Was Jehu truly a submissive vassal, or is this an Assyrian narrative shaped to emphasize the might and legitimacy of the empire? The obelisk reminds us that historical artifacts are never neutral. They are curated, designed, and interpreted with intent. Beyond the historical context, the obelisk carries mysteries of artistic and symbolic significance. Each panel is carved with meticulous detail. Garments, jewelry, and even the gestures of the figures are rendered with a precision that suggests ritual and meaning. The king of Palestine is shown with a distinctive posture, raising questions about body language and political symbolism in ancient Near Eastern art. Why was this particular depiction chosen? Were subtle gestures meant to convey submission, deference, or specific cultural messages understood by contemporary observers but lost to us now? The inscriptions themselves present both clarity and ambiguity. They provide lists of tribute, gold, silver, livestock, and luxury goods. But some terms and locations remain debated among scholars, with variations in translation affecting interpretations of trade, diplomacy, and territorial influence. Could the obelisk contain references to lost cities, obscure tribal alliances, or diplomatic practices that modern historians have yet to fully uncover? And if so, what other fragments of knowledge might have been recorded on monuments now lost to war, erosion, or the shifting sands of time? The context of the obelisk's placement within the Assyrian palace adds further layers of intrigue. Positioned prominently, it would have been viewed by courtiers, ambassadors, and visiting dignitaries, communicating not only the king's power but the ideological order of the empire. Was the monument intended to record history, intimidate rivals, or inspire loyalty among subjects? Or perhaps it served all three purposes simultaneously, a carefully orchestrated display of authority that fused narrative, art, and political strategy. Some speculative interpretations go even further. Fringe theorists have suggested that the obelisk's repeated motifs, proportions, and symbolic arrangement might encode hidden messages about Assyrian cosmology, secret knowledge, or esoteric rituals. While mainstream scholarship focuses on political and historical readings, the idea that ancient monuments might operate on multiple levels, political, religious, symbolic, adds to the sense of enduring mystery. Could the obelisk of Shalmaneser III, like so many other ancient artifacts, contain meanings we are not yet equipped to perceive, waiting for future generations to decipher hidden layers of intent? Even in the modern era, the obelisk continues to provoke reflection. Visitors and scholars alike are struck by the lifelike gestures, the realism of the reliefs, and the silent stories of distant kings brought into the shadow of an empire. The artifact is a testament to human ambition, memory, and the desire to assert presence across time. Yet for every detail we can read, every name and tribute we can confirm, there remains a gap, a question. What else did Shalmaneser III choose to immortalize in stone, and what messages have been lost to decay, plunder, or the passage of millennia? As one stands before the black obelisk, whether in person at a museum or through photographs and replicas, the interplay of power, artistry, and mystery becomes tangible. The kneeling king, the imposing figure of the Assyrian monarch, and the finely carved items of tribute all speak to a civilization that meticulously documented its authority while simultaneously leaving puzzles for us to decipher. And so, as we trace the lines of cuneiform and the shapes of raised reliefs, we are left with the enduring question that has accompanied scholars for nearly 2 centuries. Beyond the names, the tributes, and the documented victories, what truths, alliances, or secrets might remain hidden within this polished black stone, waiting for those willing to look closely enough to see beyond the surface? From the carved reliefs of the black obelisk, where kings and vassals are immortalized in stone, we turn now to objects far smaller in scale yet equally enigmatic, discovered not in royal courts or ancient cities, but deep within the earth itself. In the mining regions near Klerksdorp, South Africa, miners unearthed smooth, metallic spheres embedded within layers of pyrophyllite, a sedimentary rock that dates back over 2.8 billion years. These objects, now known as the Klerksdorp Spheres, are small enough to fit in the palm of a hand, yet they carry a weight of mystery that has captivated scientists and enthusiasts alike. At first glance, the spheres seem almost ordinary. Some are perfectly round, while others exhibit ridges or grooves that run along their surfaces. Their size varies from a few millimeters to several centimeters, and their composition is primarily a combination of hematite and wollastonite. Yet, despite their modest dimensions, these spheres raise questions that stretch the imagination. How could objects of such precise shape and symmetry have formed in rocks so ancient, long before complex life emerged on Earth? What processes, natural or otherwise, produced such regularity in a geological environment defined by randomness? Geologists have provided plausible explanations. Many suggest that the spheres are concretions, formed when mineral matter accumulated around a core over millions of years. Others note the grooves or parallel ridges on some specimens, which they interpret as natural growth patterns caused by alternating layers of mineral deposition. Yet, even with these explanations, a sense of wonder persists. The grooves are unnervingly uniform, the spheres improbably symmetrical, and the context, buried in ancient rock predating multicellular life, invites speculation. Could the forces of nature alone produce such precise forms? Or is there a deeper story hidden within these silent stones? The spheres have drawn attention far beyond the scientific community. Some observers suggest that the ridged specimens resemble manufactured objects, or even miniature wheels, hinting at processes that seem too ordered to be purely geological. Could there have been advanced techniques lost to time, or forms of life or intelligence we do not yet understand, capable of shaping stone billions of years ago? While mainstream science cautions against such interpretations, the questions persist, fueled by the uncanny precision and the deep temporal context of the spheres. Adding to the intrigue is the location itself. The spheres are embedded in rock layers formed in the Archean Eon, a time when Earth's surface was a turbulent landscape of volcanic islands, oceans, and nascent continents. It is an era so distant that most life was microscopic, single-celled, and barely capable of leaving a mark on the planet. How, then, did these objects come to be, nestled in sediment that predates complex ecosystems? Are they simply a testament to the power of mineral chemistry under extreme conditions, or do they point toward processes not fully understood by modern geology? The Klerksdorp Spheres also raise questions about scale and context. Thousands have been found across a relatively small area, with subtle variations in size, shape, and surface texture. Were these variations random, the product of fluctuating environmental conditions, or do they reflect a more systematic process, repeating with remarkable consistency across geological time? And if such precision exists in spheres formed billions of years ago, what might it suggest about the mechanisms that governed the early Earth? Mechanisms we have yet to fully comprehend? Some enthusiasts have ventured into more speculative territory, proposing that the spheres may be artifacts of an unknown ancient technology, evidence of civilizations predating recorded history, or even objects influenced by extraterrestrial intervention. While these ideas remain outside the bounds of mainstream science, their persistence is a testament to the sphere's ability to inspire wonder and challenge assumptions about Earth's deep past. Could it be that, like other enigmatic artifacts and formations we have explored, from the Cydonia face to the Giant's Causeway, these objects exist at the intersection of natural law and human curiosity, a reminder that some mysteries persist even in the most familiar landscapes? The spheres also invite reflection on perception and interpretation. When held in the hand, they feel ordinary, almost mundane. Yet when understood in geological context, they become extraordinary, bridging billions of years of Earth's history. The human mind seeks patterns, order, and meaning, and the Klerksdorp Spheres are a perfect mirror of this tendency, unassuming objects that quietly provoke profound questions. What forces shaped them? How did they endure so long, preserved in rock and resistant to erosion? And could there be similar phenomena elsewhere on Earth, buried in rocks we have yet to examine? Standing among the miners' excavations, or viewing the spheres in museum collections, one cannot help but feel a quiet awe. Here are objects that predate humanity by billions of years, yet speak to the same impulses that have driven human creativity, inquiry, and curiosity across time. They are at once simple and mysterious, ordinary and profound, their surfaces smooth, yet their origins unresolved. As we turn the spheres in our hands and examine their ridges, we are reminded that the Earth has been shaping and preserving its secrets long before we arrived, and that some enigmas may endure far beyond our capacity to explain them. The Klerksdorp Spheres remain a silent challenge to our understanding of the early Earth. Whether products of natural crystallization, forces of geology operating with improbable regularity, or remnants of processes not yet known to science, they compel us to consider the deep and ancient history of our planet. They are a testament to time, to resilience, and to mystery itself, leaving us with a lingering question that echoes across billions of years. What other secrets lie buried in the rocks beneath our feet, waiting for patient observation, careful study, and a willingness to confront the unknown? From the small, enigmatic Klerksdorp Spheres, shaped billions of years ago by forces both understood and mysterious, we shift now to a human landscape equally mesmerizing, where the hands of long-vanished peoples carved their beliefs, rituals, and perhaps their secrets into stone. In the remote highlands of southern Colombia, the San Agustín Archaeological Park emerges from misted valleys and undulating ridges, a site of monumental stone sculptures, tombs, and ceremonial terraces. It is a place where history, art, and mystery converge, and where every carved figure seems to watch silently across centuries, inviting contemplation and wonder. Approaching the park, one is immediately struck by the scale and density of its monuments. Massive statues, some standing over 6 meters tall, dot the landscape, each uniquely carved from volcanic rock. Some depict human figures, others hybrid forms with feline or serpent-like features, and many hold enigmatic expressions that defy simple interpretation. Pathways wind between mounds and ceremonial terraces, leading visitors through a labyrinth of stone, each turn offering a new glimpse into a world long buried under soil and vegetation. How did these people, whose culture thrived between roughly 3,300 BC and 1550 AD, conceive, transport, and sculpt such enormous works with only rudimentary tools? Archaeologists have long studied the site, uncovering burial mounds containing stone sarcophagi, ceramic artifacts, and skeletal remains. These findings suggest a complex society, organized not only politically but spiritually, with elaborate funerary practices designed to honor and preserve memory. Yet despite decades of excavation, much remains unclear. The iconography of the sculptures is perplexing. Figures with exaggerated features, hands holding unknown objects, and animals that seem symbolic rather than literal. Were these representations of deities, ancestral spirits, or mythological beings? Or could they have been intended as protective figures, guardians of tombs and ceremonial spaces? The most compelling aspect of San Agustín is the sense of intentionality in the placement of its monuments. Many sculptures align along terraces, forming processional avenues or ritual pathways, while others appear clustered around burial mounds. Some researchers have proposed that these alignments were deliberate, reflecting astronomical observations, seasonal cycles, or cosmological beliefs. Could these stone arrangements have encoded knowledge about the movements of the sun, moon, or stars? Or were they designed to structure human behavior, guiding ceremonies and reinforcing the authority of elite lineages? The precise rationale remains elusive, inviting speculation as much as explanation. Equally mysterious is the transportation of these massive sculptures. The nearest volcanic quarries lie kilometers from the park, and some statues weigh several tons. How were they moved through rugged terrain without wheels, draft animals, or advanced machinery? Evidence suggests ingenious methods, perhaps including rolling logs, sledges, and coordinated human labor, yet the mechanics of the process remain largely hypothetical. Did the act of moving these statues carry ritual significance as well, transforming the labor into a spiritual or ceremonial practice? Local legends add further depth to the enigma. Stories handed down through generations speak of powerful spirits inhabiting the stones, guardians of sacred knowledge, and of monumental works that embody the memory of ancient rulers or gods. While these oral histories cannot be verified archaeologically, they reveal the enduring cultural resonance of the site. How much of the symbolism embedded in the stone was meant to be understood by contemporary populations, and how much was deliberately obscured, accessible only to initiated priests or leaders? Some scholars have also noted stylistic parallels with other pre-Columbian sites across the Andes and Amazonia, suggesting a broader network of cultural exchange, shared iconography, or common ritual practices. Yet the distinctiveness of San Agustín, its colossal statues, complex tombs, and unique motifs, sets it apart. Could this site represent a civilization whose full history and scope have been lost to time, leaving only fragments preserved in stone? Might there have been knowledge or practices so refined or specialized that no contemporary records remain to explain them fully? The iconography itself raises unsettling questions. Many figures combine human and animal features in ways that are not simply decorative. Some appear to wear masks or headdresses, while others carry symbolic tools or ritual implements. Are these expressions of mythological narratives, or might they encode information about social hierarchy, spiritual authority, or even astronomical observations? In some instances, the faces of the statues seem to follow observers, a phenomenon that adds a subtle, almost uncanny quality to the site. Could the creators have intended this effect, using perspective, positioning, and the natural contours of the landscape to instill a sense of presence and vigilance? Even the construction of burial mounds presents a mystery. Many tombs contain multiple chambers, elaborately carved stone sarcophagi, and carefully arranged offerings. Yet the spatial organization often defies easy interpretation, with some mounds appearing deliberately isolated, while others cluster along terraces or near processional paths. Why were certain tombs positioned in particular locations? Were these choices practical, spiritual, or symbolic, or some combination of all three? And what stories might have been encoded in the arrangement of stones, now obscured by centuries of erosion and human activity? Walking through the park today, one senses the persistence of time and the depth of human ingenuity. The statues, tombs, and terraces evoke both reverence and curiosity, reminding us that even in a landscape shaped by natural forces, human presence leaves enduring traces. Every carved figure, every carefully shaped mound, hints at intentions, beliefs, and stories that remain only partially understood. The quiet grandeur of San Agustín, with its misted hills and verdant valleys, invites reflection. How do we interpret the past when so much is missing, when context and meaning have been obscured by centuries of silence? San Agustín Archaeological Park stands as a testament to the ingenuity, devotion, and imagination of its creators. Yet it also reminds us that history is never fully revealed. For every mound excavated, for every statue restored, questions remain. Why were these forms chosen? Why were they placed here? And what knowledge or beliefs guided their creation? And perhaps most hauntingly, what else lies buried beneath the soil, hidden in plain sight, waiting for patient observation, careful excavation, or even the eye attuned to the subtle rhythms of the landscape? As the sun rises over the misted hills and shadows stretch across terraces and statues, one cannot help but feel the presence of those who shaped this world. Their hands carved stone to preserve memory, assert authority, and express belief. Yet their intentions, their stories, and perhaps even their knowledge remain partly obscured, suspended in the silent vigil of San Agustin's monuments. In this interplay of stone, landscape, and human ambition, we are left with a profound, enduring question. What else does this ancient highland still hold, and what might we discover if we look closely enough to see beyond what is immediately visible? From the misted terraces and enigmatic statues of San Agustín, where ancient hands carved devotion and myth into stone, we move now to a single, small object that has stirred extraordinary debate among archaeologists and historians: the Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head. Found in central Mexico, this diminutive artifact, barely a few centimeters tall, has become a focal point for questions that stretch across continents, cultures, and centuries, challenging conventional understandings of ancient contact and cultural exchange. Discovered in 1933 during excavations at the site of Calixtlahuaca, in the modern-day state of Mexico, the head was buried in a stratigraphic layer associated with pre-Columbian tombs. Crafted from terracotta, it depicts a human face wearing a conical hat, with features that strikingly resemble those of a Mediterranean or European individual rather than indigenous Mesoamerican populations. The level of detail is extraordinary. The nose, eyes, and lips are carefully proportioned, the expression subtly individualized, hinting at the skill and intention of its creator. Yet it is precisely these characteristics that raise profound questions. How did an artifact of such apparent Old World influence end up embedded within a context dating to between 1476 and 1510 AD, decades before documented European contact with the interior of Mexico? Archaeologists have meticulously studied the head, confirming its pre-Columbian context through soil analysis, stratigraphy, and carbon dating of surrounding organic material. The tomb in which it was found was clearly associated with local inhabitants, suggesting that it was placed there intentionally rather than having arrived through later disturbance or excavation contamination. This makes the head an anomaly, a quiet yet persistent challenge to conventional chronology. If the Europeans had not yet reached this region, how did an object so distinctively foreign arrive in a pre-Columbian burial? The artistry itself invites scrutiny. The head's features are remarkably lifelike, with attention to facial proportions and the delicate modeling of hair or headdress. Terracotta figurines are common in Mesoamerican archaeology, but none from the period exhibit this combination of realism and distinctly Mediterranean physiognomy. Could the head have been created locally, inspired by descriptions or stories of foreign visitors unknown to the historical record? Or might it have arrived through indirect trade networks carried across the seas and lands long before the documented arrival of Europeans? Several mainstream explanations have been proposed. Some scholars suggest that the head could be a coincidence, a product of artistic variation that simply appears European to modern eyes. Others hypothesize that it represents a Mesoamerican's imaginative rendering of a foreigner, perhaps influenced by earlier, indirect contact with traders or travelers from distant lands. Yet each explanation leaves unresolved questions, for the artifact's realism and anatomical precision suggest a reference more concrete than imagination alone could produce. Adding to the mystery is the context of the tomb itself. The head was placed alongside other indigenous objects, ceramics, tools, and ornaments typical of the local late post-classic culture, indicating that it was incorporated into existing burial rituals. This integration suggests cultural significance, implying that those who buried the head attributed meaning or value to it. But what meaning? Was it a symbol of trade, a marker of status, or perhaps a talisman brought from afar? And if it arrived from another continent, who carried it, and under what circumstances, so far inland in central Mexico? Some fringe theories have posited that the head could be evidence of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. Could sailors from the Mediterranean or elsewhere have reached the Americas centuries before Columbus? While such ideas remain controversial and speculative, the artifact itself refuses to be easily categorized. It exists in a space between the documented and the unknown, offering a tangible, physical mystery in a field often reliant on interpretation of absence and fragmentary evidence. The Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head also raises questions about perception and bias. Its features have been described variously as Roman, Phoenician, or even Greek, depending on the observer, reflecting our tendency to interpret the past through contemporary or familiar lenses. Yet the artifact resists definitive classification, defying easy comparison to both Mesoamerican and Old World styles. Could it be a hybrid creation, a fusion of artistic conventions, or a lost tradition that has left no parallel elsewhere? Each possibility deepens the enigma, reminding us that human creativity often transcends our expectations. Even its small scale is significant. Though only a few centimeters tall, the head commands attention. Its diminutive form allows it to pass unnoticed at first glance, yet its presence lingers, compelling study, debate, and reflection. It is a reminder that sometimes history's most provocative mysteries are contained not in sprawling cities or monumental tombs, but in objects that can sit quietly in the palm of a hand, carrying stories that defy time and expectation. The discovery also invites contemplation of the broader networks and interactions of the pre-Columbian world. Mesoamerica was far from isolated, with trade networks linking highlands, lowlands, rivers, and coastlines. Could such connections have facilitated the movement of ideas, motifs, or even objects from distant cultures? Or does the Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head remain a singular anomaly, a silent testament to an event lost to history, an encounter unrecorded yet etched forever in terracotta? As one examines the head today, whether under museum lighting or in archival photographs, it is impossible not to feel the weight of centuries. The careful modeling, the subtle expressions, and the context in which it was found all hint at a story that is only partially revealed. For every observation, there remains a question. For every measured analysis, a deeper layer of uncertainty. What journeys might this small artifact have undertaken? What hands shaped it? What eyes observed it? And what significance did it hold for those who placed it in the tomb? The Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head compels us to confront the limits of our knowledge, to acknowledge that history is rarely neat or fully understood. It exists at the intersection of evidence and imagination, requiring both careful scholarship and open-minded inquiry. And perhaps most compellingly, it invites us to wonder, how many other objects, quietly buried and overlooked, might challenge our understanding of the past, revealing connections, encounters, or journeys that have yet to be imagined? In this single small head, so precise, so vividly rendered, and yet so contextually anomalous, we see the power of mystery itself. It reminds us that the past is not static or fixed, but a landscape of questions, surprises, and unanticipated revelations. As we turn it in our hands or study it through the lens of science, we are left with the same profound question that has echoed through every era of discovery. What stories, hidden or forgotten, lie still beneath the earth, waiting to be found, studied, and understood? And in the silence of the tomb where it was placed centuries ago, does the head itself still watch, offering a challenge to our assumptions and a reminder that history often speaks in whispers rather than proclamations? From the small, enigmatic Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head, which challenges our understanding of transcontinental encounters and human imagination, we now journey across millennia and continents to the banks of the Nile, where ancient Egyptians sought to preserve not only the body, but the very essence of life beyond death. Here, in tombs silent for thousands of years, lie the Egyptian canopic jars, objects of both ritual precision and lingering mystery, vessels that carried the remains of organs, yet seem to hold far more than what is visible to the eye. At first glance, a canopic jar appears unassuming, a smooth, cylindrical container, often no taller than a modern coffee cup, capped with a carved lid that represents one of the four sons of Horus. Yet their simplicity belies the complexity of their purpose and the richness of the belief system they represent. Each jar was dedicated to a specific organ, the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines. Removed during mummification, carefully embalmed, and placed within these containers to safeguard the deceased in the afterlife. The lids themselves are works of art, shaped into human, baboon, jackal, and falcon heads, each guardian charged with protection of its assigned organ. Standing before these jars, one senses the weight of intention, the fusion of artistry, religion, and an obsession with immortality that stretches across centuries. Historians note that canopic jars were not merely functional. They embodied an ideology, a cosmology in miniature. The ancient Egyptians believed that the preservation of the body was inseparable from the survival of the soul. The organs contained within the jars were essential to the deceased's existence in the afterlife, and each jar's protective deity symbolized divine oversight. Imbued with spells and inscriptions, these jars acted as both guardians and conduits, connecting the physical and spiritual worlds. Yet despite centuries of scholarship, questions linger. How did the Egyptians develop such intricate funerary technologies? And what rituals ensured that these vessels fulfilled their sacred purpose? The jars themselves hold mysteries that extend beyond their visible function. In some tombs, jars are found in unexpected arrangements, or with materials and inscriptions that vary from canonical patterns. Why were certain jars elaborated with more intricate carvings, while others remain almost plain? Could these differences reflect the social status of the deceased, regional variations, or secretive rites known only to priests and embalmers? And in some cases, modern analysis has revealed traces of substances whose precise purpose remains uncertain, hinting at lost formulas or ritual processes that science has yet to fully decipher. The materiality of the jars adds another layer of fascination. While many were fashioned from limestone, alabaster, or pottery, some rare examples incorporate metals or exotic stones, suggesting not only technical skill, but also access to resources that were difficult to obtain. How were these materials sourced and shaped with such precision in an era without modern tools? Did the Egyptians possess specialized techniques for carving stone and pottery that have since been lost? Or were these jars the product of trial, refinement, and centuries of artisanal tradition? Equally compelling is the symbolic resonance of the jars themselves. The human, baboon, jackal, and falcon-headed lids are not mere decorations. They are embodiments of myth, cosmology, and protective intent. The falcon-headed Kebesenuef safeguards the intestines. The jackal-headed Duamutef protects the stomach. These associations, repeated across tombs and centuries, point to a codified belief system that meticulously linked the physical and metaphysical. Yet some jars display subtle variations, unusual inscriptions, or unexpected iconographic elements. Could these anomalies represent regional interpretations, individual experimentation, or knowledge now lost? And what do they tell us about the evolution of Egyptian funerary practices and the interplay between standardization and innovation? The use of canopic jars also raises broader questions about the transmission of knowledge. Ancient texts describe rituals for mummification and organ preservation, but many of the technical details, how chemicals were prepared, how organs were treated, how the jars themselves were consecrated, remain partially obscure. Was this knowledge deliberately secret, restricted to temple elites, or lost over time due to social upheaval, conquest, or cultural shifts? Could these jars, in their combination of function, art, and ritual, serve as a repository not just of organs, but of technical and spiritual expertise encoded in form, material, and placement? Some speculative interpretations extend even further. Fringe theorists have suggested that the precision of organ preservation, combined with the symbolic power of the jars, might reflect a deeper understanding of human anatomy or even a proto-scientific awareness that has been largely obscured by time. While mainstream Egyptology emphasizes religious and cultural explanations, the very perfection and longevity of these artifacts invites curiosity. How much practical knowledge, embedded in ritual and encoded in craft, did the Egyptians possess, and what might remain undiscovered in tombs yet unexcavated? Beyond their original tombs, the Canopic jars continue to intrigue modern viewers. Museums and collections around the world display these objects as objects of wonder, miniature monuments to human ingenuity, artistry, and belief. Observers are struck by the combination of technical skill and symbolic depth, the way a small vessel can encapsulate theology, ritual, and material mastery simultaneously. And yet, for all their beauty and historical clarity, the jars retain a sense of the uncanny. They are containers of life and death, guardians of the unseen, and symbols of a civilization's attempt to bridge mortality itself. Examining these jars today, one becomes aware of the interplay between preservation and mystery. The organs once contained within have long since decayed or been removed for study, but the jars themselves endure, silent witnesses to a worldview both meticulous and enigmatic. Each lid, each inscription, each trace of embalming substance speaks to practices, knowledge, and intentions that remain only partially illuminated. What else might these vessels reveal if studied with new techniques, or if undiscovered tombs yield more examples? Could there be formulas, symbols, or techniques still hidden, waiting to illuminate the sophistication of Egyptian mortuary science? The Egyptian canopic jars remind us that even the most familiar artifacts carry layers of mystery. They speak of a civilization deeply concerned with life, death, and continuity, yet they also challenge us to imagine what has been lost, forgotten, or deliberately concealed. Standing before them, whether in a museum, a scholarly text, or within the quiet chambers of an ancient tomb, one is confronted by the interplay of human ingenuity, ritual intention, and the enduring enigma of mortality. How did the ancient Egyptians conceive of preserving essence in stone? And what secrets, buried in hieroglyphs, substances, and symbolic forms, might yet be revealed as our tools and understanding advance? As we reflect on the Egyptian canopic jars, it becomes clear that they are more than containers. They are a dialogue across time, a connection between the living and the dead, the material and the spiritual. They provoke a fundamental question, one that echoes through millennia and resonates with every mystery we have explored in this journey. How much of human knowledge, ingenuity, and belief has been lost to time, and what remains hidden, awaiting discovery, interpretation, or revelation? In their silent presence, these jars invite contemplation, demanding that we consider not only the ancient past, but the limits of what we can know, understand, and preserve. From the intimate, meticulously crafted canopic jars of ancient Egypt, designed to preserve not only the body but the essence of life itself, we now turn to a landscape shaped by human hands on a much grander scale. In the rolling hills of southern Ohio, under skies that have witnessed millennia of change, stretches the Great Serpent Mound, a monumental effigy of a serpent, winding more than 400 meters in length, its sinuous curves rising subtly above the grassy landscape. From above, its full form emerges, a head curling into a spiral, a long, undulating body, and a tail coiled into a series of loops that seem to pulse with hidden meaning. Standing on the ground, the scale is both humbling and mysterious. The serpent seems to have grown out of the earth itself, ancient and eternal. First recorded by European settlers in the 19th century, the Great Serpent Mound has captivated the attention of archaeologists, historians, and enthusiasts alike. Early surveys noted its remarkable preservation, while aerial photography and modern mapping technologies revealed the precision of its form. Unlike burial mounds or fortifications, the Serpent Mound does not appear to serve a practical function. It is not defensive, nor does it contain clear evidence of habitation. Instead, it appears to have been constructed deliberately as a symbolic or ceremonial monument, an expression of human intent on a scale that stretches beyond the ordinary. Scholars generally date the mound to between 1000 BC and 300 AD, although debate continues regarding which culture or cultures were responsible. Some associate it with the Adena culture, known for their conical burial mounds and early ceremonial earthworks, while others suggest the later Fort Ancient people, whose societies flourished in the Ohio River Valley just prior to European contact. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal from within the mound supports multiple periods of construction or modification, implying that the site was revisited, reshaped, and perhaps reinterpreted over centuries. Yet, even with these clues, the purpose of the mound remains enigmatic. Why a serpent? Why this particular shape, stretching and curling across the landscape? Some scholars suggest that the serpent motif is tied to cosmology, fertility, or seasonal cycles. The head of the serpent aligns roughly with the summer solstice sunset, while the coils correspond to lunar events or perhaps other astronomical phenomena. Could the builders have intended this effigy as a map of the sky, a calendar etched in earth, or a sacred conduit connecting the human and celestial worlds? If so, it reflects not only remarkable technical skill, but a profound understanding of astronomical observation and spatial awareness, embedded in monumental earthworks. The size and precision of the mound also provoke awe. Constructed without metal tools or draft animals, the serpentine earthwork required the coordinated labor of many hands over significant periods of time. The earth was shaped carefully, the contours maintained, and the length measured with surprising consistency. How did the builders achieve such scale and continuity, particularly when the serpent's form incorporates subtle curves and spirals that are difficult to execute even with modern surveying tools? Was the process guided by ritualistic tradition, by oral measurements passed across generations, or by some form of observational geometry now lost to time? Artifacts found near the mound offer tantalizing hints, but few definitive answers. Pottery fragments, stone tools, and occasional burial remains suggest ceremonial activity, yet no direct evidence explains the serpent's symbolic significance. Some researchers argue that it was a representation of a mythological creature, perhaps a guardian of water or a manifestation of spiritual power. Others propose that it reflects human understanding of the natural world, connecting topography, waterways, and the movement of the heavens into a single visual and symbolic expression. Could it be that the mound is simultaneously mythological, astronomical, and practical, operating on multiple levels of meaning that remain partially obscured to modern observers? The serpent's form itself invites further speculation. Its spiraling tail is unusual among effigy mounds, and some have suggested that the design represents cycles of life and death, the flow of energy, or a visual representation of transformation. Could the undulating curves encode knowledge of seasonal patterns, celestial alignments, or cosmological principles, transmitted through generations of careful observation? And if so, what was lost with the passage of time? Rituals, chants, or stories that would have made the meaning explicit, now silenced by centuries of cultural change. Some fringe interpretations have gone even further, proposing that the Serpent Mound reflects ancient contact or inspiration from distant cultures, perhaps echoing symbols seen elsewhere in the Americas or even across the Atlantic. While these ideas remain speculative and contested, the very fact that a single earthwork can provoke such questions underscores its enduring mystery. The mound's combination of scale, precision, and symbolism challenges assumptions about pre-Columbian societies in North America, inviting a reconsideration of their sophistication, observational skills, and ceremonial creativity. The location of the mound amplifies its mystery. Perched atop a plateau overlooking a meandering stream, it commands a natural perspective that enhances its visibility across the surrounding landscape. Was this chosen deliberately to emphasize spiritual power, territorial presence, or ritual importance? And how might the placement relate to other nearby earthworks and mounds, many of which exhibit alignments, repeated motifs, or spatial relationships that suggest a broader ceremonial or cosmological network? The Serpent Mound is not isolated. It exists within a cultural landscape that we are only beginning to understand, hinting at a depth of meaning now mostly obscured. Modern technology has offered new insights, but also more questions. LiDAR mapping, ground-penetrating radar, and soil analysis reveal layers of construction, evidence of repair, and subtle topographical adjustments. Some areas of the mound contain fill material from distant locations, while others show evidence of post-depositional modifications. Could these reflect ritual renewals, seasonal maintenance, or perhaps reinterpretations by successive generations who continue to honor and transform the site? If so, the mound becomes not just a static monument, but a living document of human engagement over centuries. A canvas continually reshaped to reflect evolving beliefs and knowledge. Standing today at the site, with the wind brushing across the plateau and the faint curves of the serpent visible from a ridge or a nearby hill, one cannot help but feel a sense of awe and reflection. The Serpent Mound embodies human ingenuity, observational skill, and spiritual expression, yet its true meaning remains elusive. How did its creators conceptualize such a monument without written language? What ceremonies, stories, or beliefs accompanied its construction and continued use? And what has been lost, buried beneath grass, soil, and centuries of interpretation, leaving only this enduring, winding form to silently guard its secrets? The Great Serpent Mound reminds us that some mysteries are as much about presence as about evidence. Its form, scale, and context speak across centuries, inviting us to consider the complexity of human intention and the depth of knowledge possessed by societies we may underestimate. It challenges us to reconcile the tangible with the symbolic, the laborious with the ephemeral, and the visible with the unseen. In its curves and coils, in the careful shaping of earth and alignment with sky, lies a question that remains unanswered. What did this serpent truly mean to those who built it, and what might it still reveal to those willing to observe, reflect, and wonder? As the sun sets over the rolling Ohio hills, casting long shadows across the mound, the serpent seems to breathe with the rhythm of time itself, a silent, enduring testament to human curiosity, skill, and devotion. And yet, for all the studies, measurements, and interpretations, the Great Serpent Mound retains a sense of the unknowable. It is a reminder that history, like the earth beneath our feet, holds secrets that endure, inviting those who encounter it to ask not only what we know, but what might remain hidden, waiting for the next observer to uncover, contemplate, and imagine. From the rolling contours of Ohio's Great Serpent Mound, a monument of earth and human intention, we now return to the deserts and temples of Egypt, where the sands conceal secrets of a far more enigmatic nature: the life, reign, and sudden disappearance of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Known for his revolutionary religious reforms and the creation of a new capital city at Amarna, Akhenaten remains one of the most compelling and puzzling figures of ancient Egypt. His story intertwines power, spirituality, and mystery, a narrative that continues to challenge historians, archaeologists, and Egyptologists alike. Akhenaten, originally named Amenhotep IV, assumed the throne of Egypt around 1353 BC during the 18th dynasty. Unlike his predecessors, he embarked on an unprecedented religious transformation, promoting the worship of Aten, the sun disk, over the traditional pantheon of Egyptian gods. This was not a subtle shift. Temples were abandoned, statues destroyed, and the priesthood of Amun stripped of influence. The pharaoh built an entirely new city, Akhenaten, designed to serve as the political and spiritual heart of this monotheistic experiment. The city's remains, unearthed centuries later, reveal sprawling palaces, temples, and administrative buildings, yet they also hint at abrupt abandonment, as if the city, and its king, vanished from memory. During Akhenaten's reign, art itself transformed. Statues and reliefs portray the pharaoh in an unusually stylized manner. Elongated features, exaggerated limbs, and a distinctly androgynous form. Scholars have debated the significance of this artistic shift, suggesting spiritual symbolism, divine association, or even medical conditions. Yet, whatever the reason, the visual language of Akhenaten's court is starkly different from the rigid conventions of previous dynasties, reflecting a broader break with tradition that extended from belief to aesthetic. Could these stylistic choices be a deliberate message? A signal to both contemporaries and posterity that this ruler was not only unique, but fundamentally otherworldly. Despite these monumental changes, the historical record grows murky after the death of Akhenaten's successor, Smenkhkare, and the brief reign of Tutankhamun, the famous boy king. For Akhenaten himself, the end is shrouded in uncertainty. Unlike other pharaohs, who were buried with elaborate funerary rites and preserved in tombs visible to history, Akhenaten's final resting place remains unconfirmed. His mummy has not been definitively identified, and references to him were systematically erased from many inscriptions, temples, and records, a deliberate attempt to remove him from memory, a practice known as damnatio memoriae. Why was Akhenaten singled out in this way? Was it solely political, an attempt by subsequent rulers to restore traditional religion, or was there a deeper unease surrounding his radical reforms? Archaeological discoveries have added tantalizing clues, but also more questions. Some scholars point to a set of unidentified mummies from the Valley of the Kings and other burial sites as potential candidates for Akhenaten, yet none have been confirmed. Modern DNA analysis, radiocarbon dating, and forensic reconstruction provide hints but no certainties, leaving the identity of his remains and even the circumstances of his death ambiguous. Did he die in Amarna, perhaps of illness or accident? Was he relocated secretly, buried in an unmarked tomb to protect him from desecration? Or did political turmoil force his disappearance from the historical stage in a more dramatic fashion, leaving behind only the ruins of his capital and the altered memory of his dynasty? Beyond the physical record, the narrative of Akhenaten's disappearance intersects with questions of ideology and culture. His rejection of the traditional pantheon disrupted not only religious practices, but also the social and political order. Temples and priesthoods wielded significant power. To marginalize them was to provoke tension and potential unrest. Could his disappearance, whether by death, exile, or concealment, reflect the resistance of entrenched institutions? Or was it part of a larger strategy by successors to reconcile Egypt with its own history, reintegrating traditional beliefs while quietly erasing the radical pharaoh from official memory? The mystery deepens when considering Akhenaten's legacy. Though nearly obliterated from monuments and inscriptions, traces of his religious and cultural innovations linger. Artistic styles influenced later works. Certain theological concepts echo in subsequent texts and rituals. Scholars debate whether these echoes were deliberate preservation, cultural inertia, or coincidence. And then there is Tutankhamun, often described as Akhenaten's son or close relative, who restored the traditional gods and moved the capital back to Thebes. Was Tutankhamun's reign a careful balancing act, reconciling the radical ideas of Akhenaten with the conservative expectations of Egypt's elite, or a more systematic attempt to erase the memory of his predecessor entirely? Some fringe theories have even suggested more speculative explanations. Could Akhenaten have survived a political overthrow, fleeing Egypt in secret? Might he have been exiled, living out his days in obscurity while his city and name were deliberately erased? While such ideas remain outside mainstream scholarship, their persistence illustrates the profound uncertainty surrounding his life and death. The historical record offers tantalizing glimpses, yet leaves crucial gaps. No tomb has been definitively linked to him. No contemporary narrative explains his disappearance, and his reforms vanish abruptly from the archaeological record. Examining the ruins of Akhenaten today, one senses the scale of ambition, vision, and disruption inherent in Akhenaten's reign. Palaces and temples lie in fragmented ruins, scattered across the desert, their stones bleached by sun and wind. Yet, amidst the decay, the intent is still visible, a city carefully planned for both ritual and governance, a reflection of a king's desire to reshape Egypt's spiritual and social landscape. How did the citizens of Akhenaten experience this upheaval? Did they participate willingly in the cult of Aten? Or did they cling to older traditions in secret? And how did the pharaoh himself navigate the pressures of radical innovation, opposition from entrenched elites, and the uncertainty of mortality? Even the surviving art and inscriptions invite reflection. Scenes of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, of worshippers raising hands to the sun disk, convey devotion, intimacy, and a sense of divine favor. Yet the art also carries subtle anomalies, proportions that unsettle, expressions that are difficult to interpret, and gestures that hint at deeper meanings lost to time. Could these works be a coded language, a message meant only for those initiated in the mysteries of Aten? Or were they intended as propaganda to assert the pharaoh's authority and legitimacy in an unstable political landscape? As we consider the disappearance of Akhenaten, we confront questions that stretch beyond individual biography. His story is a reflection of the fragility of power, the consequences of radical ideology, and the selective nature of historical memory. How do societies choose what to preserve and what to erase? How much of history is determined by survival, by the whims of political successors, or by the erosion of memory over centuries? Akhenaten's legacy exists in fragments, in ruins, and in whispered speculation, reminding us that even the most prominent figures can vanish almost entirely from the historical record. The mystery of Akhenaten's disappearance continues to challenge our understanding. Was he buried in secrecy, removed to protect him, or deliberately left unrecorded to erase his influence? Did he die of natural causes, succumb to political intrigue, or escape into a fate unknown? Each hypothesis raises further questions, illuminating both the possibilities and the limits of our knowledge. And in contemplating these uncertainties, we are drawn into a broader meditation on history itself. How much is lost, how much is deliberately hidden, and how much waits for patient observation, careful excavation, and open-minded interpretation? Standing in the remains of Amarna, amidst the ruins of temples and palaces, one can almost sense the presence of Akhenaten himself. His vision reshaped a nation. His disappearance erased him from monuments, yet the echoes of his reign linger in stone, art, and mystery. And as the sun sets over the desert sands, casting long shadows across the city he built and abandoned, one is left with a haunting question. What truly happened to Pharaoh Akhenaten, And what secrets about his life, reign, and death remain buried beneath the sands, awaiting discovery by those who dare to seek them? From the shifting sands and ruined temples of Amarna, where Pharaoh Akhenaten vanished into history, leaving behind only traces of his radical reign, we now turn to a mystery of ink and parchment, an enigma not of stone or earth, but of language, illustration, and human imagination. The Voynich Manuscript, a small but perplexing codex, has captivated scholars, cryptographers, and enthusiasts for over a century, resisting every attempt at interpretation and challenging the boundaries of what we understand about medieval knowledge and secrecy. The manuscript itself is striking at first sight. Bound in worn vellum, the pages are filled with an elegant script that does not match any known alphabet or language. Its illustrations are equally confounding. Plants that do not resemble any known species, cosmological diagrams that hint at astronomical or astrological systems, and intricate interwoven patterns suggesting both purpose and design. Each page seems deliberate, crafted with care and precision, yet wholly alien in content. Holding the manuscript, or even observing its pages, confronts one with a profound tension. The familiarity of a codex as a vessel of knowledge, juxtaposed with an inscrutability that borders on the uncanny. Carbon dating places the manuscript to the early 15th century, around 1404 to 1438 AD, a period of vibrant intellectual and artistic activity in Europe. Yet its origin, authorship, and purpose remain uncertain. It first appears in historical records in 1912, when antique book dealer Wilfrid Voynich acquired it in Italy, giving the manuscript the name by which it is now universally known. Its provenance prior to this acquisition is a patchwork of speculation, with hints of ownership by European nobility and monastic collectors, but no concrete record of the scribe, patron, or intended audience. Who created such a work, and why did it survive for centuries with its meaning untransmitted and its purpose unrecorded? The script of the manuscript is among its most confounding features. Attempts to decipher it have spanned decades and disciplines, from professional cryptographers of both world wars to modern computational linguists, but no translation has been universally accepted. The patterns of letter frequency, word structure, and repetition suggest a language or code rather than random symbols, yet the content resists correlation with known tongues. Is the manuscript an unknown language, perhaps a regional dialect lost to history? Or is it an elaborate cipher, a carefully constructed code meant to conceal knowledge from all but a select few? And if so, what knowledge was so precious that it demanded secrecy so absolute it would outlast its own creators? The illustrations raise equally perplexing questions. Many pages depict botanical specimens that appear entirely imaginary, plants with roots, leaves, and flowers that do not correspond to any known species. Some scholars suggest that the images may encode medicinal knowledge or serve as mnemonic devices for knowledge now lost. Others propose that they are entirely allegorical, representing metaphysical or mystical concepts rather than physical reality. The astronomical diagrams hint at a sophisticated understanding of celestial patterns, yet they also feature unidentifiable constellations and orbital schematics. Could the manuscript be a compendium of hidden knowledge, blending empirical observation with spiritual or symbolic insight? Or is it an artistic experiment, a meditation on the natural and cosmic order, intended to inspire rather than instruct? Material analysis of the manuscript confirms the medieval origin of its vellum and ink, ruling out modern forgery, yet the precision and consistency of its script suggest a single, highly skilled scribe, or perhaps a small group trained to reproduce an established system. What was the scribe's intention, and how much of the manuscript's content was meant to be deciphered? Was it designed to preserve knowledge across generations, or to communicate with an exclusive audience capable of understanding its signs? And what cultural, intellectual, or spiritual context produced such a creation in an era otherwise dominated by Latin and vernacular European texts? Some researchers have explored the manuscript from a linguistic perspective, applying statistical analysis, cryptographic methods, and artificial intelligence. Patterns emerge: repeated word structures, recognizable groupings, and syntax-like arrangements. Yet these patterns do not reveal meaning. Could this be a constructed language, a private intellectual experiment, or even a universal language attempted by a visionary thinker centuries ahead of their time? Alternatively, might it encode esoteric knowledge of alchemy, astrology, or natural philosophy that was deliberately obfuscated to prevent misuse or misinterpretation? Fringe theories abound, yet none are conclusive. Some suggest extraterrestrial influence or knowledge obtained through mystical revelation. Others argue for it as an elaborate hoax intended to confound or impress. Yet even the hoax hypothesis struggles under scrutiny. The manuscript's structure is far too consistent, the patterns too complex, and the artistry too meticulous to have been crafted purely as deception. There is intentionality, a deep logic embedded in both script and illustration, but one that eludes our comprehension. Could the Voynich Manuscript be a bridge to a lost tradition, a repository of knowledge erased by time, or a symbolic work intended to challenge the reader's mind as much as their intellect? The manuscript's physical form adds another layer to its mystery. Parchment pages are remarkably well preserved, and ink analysis shows pigments consistent with 15th century materials. The meticulous layout, paragraphs, margins, illustrations, and marginalia indicates careful planning. It is not a casual notebook or a collection of random sketches. It is a unified, deliberate work. Could this suggest that the manuscript was considered sacred or highly valuable? If so, how did it survive the centuries when so many other works of its kind were lost, destroyed, or deliberately suppressed? Despite decades of study, the Voynich Manuscript remains a riddle of intention and interpretation. Its unknown language, unidentifiable flora, and enigmatic diagrams resist translation and explanation. Each attempted decipherment reveals the limitations of our knowledge and the ingenuity of its creator, reminding us that human intellect can produce forms that outlast understanding, that challenge our assumptions, and that endure as puzzles for generations to contemplate. Holding the manuscript, or even observing its pages through photographs or digital reproductions, evokes a profound sense of human curiosity and wonder. The scribe's hand is visible, the ink deliberate, the designs precise, but the message remains elusive. Every attempt at decoding becomes an exploration not only of content, but of human ambition, imagination, and the limits of historical memory. What was it that compelled the creator to craft a work so enigmatic, so deliberate, and so enduringly perplexing? The Voynich Manuscript reminds us that some mysteries transcend their material form. It is not merely a book, but a testament to the persistence of the unknown, a bridge across centuries that challenges our understanding of language, science, and art. Like the disappearance of Akhenaten or the monumental curves of the Serpent Mound, it invites contemplation of human ingenuity and the fragility of knowledge. How much remains undiscovered in the manuscript's pages? What lost wisdom might it contain? And how will future generations approach the puzzle with tools, insight, or perspectives we cannot yet imagine? As we consider the manuscript's pale parchment and intricate illustrations, we are drawn into a meditation on history itself. How much do we truly know, how much has been lost, and how much remains deliberately hidden? The Voynich Manuscript, with its undeciphered text and alien flora, stands as a monument to the mysteries of human thought, imagination, and memory. It challenges scholars, intrigues enthusiasts and captivates the imagination, leaving a profound, open-ended question. What secrets does it still hold, and when, or if, will the voice of its creator finally be heard across the centuries? From the perplexing symbols and cryptic illustrations of the Voynich Manuscript, where ink and parchment preserve a secret that has defied centuries of inquiry, we turn now to a mystery carved from wood and buried beneath the peatlands of Siberia. In 1890, near the Ural Mountains, peat miners uncovered what would come to be known as the Shigir Idol, an enigmatic wooden sculpture, standing over 5 meters tall, its surface covered with a network of geometric patterns, stylized faces, and marks whose meaning remains a matter of intense scholarly debate. Unlike stone monuments or manuscripts, this artifact seems to carry a voice from the depths of prehistory, a silent witness to rituals and beliefs long forgotten. The Shigir Idol is remarkable in many ways. Radiocarbon dating places its creation around 9,500 BC, making it one of the oldest known wooden sculptures in the world, older even than the Egyptian pyramids by millennia. Carved from larch, a resilient wood that has preserved astonishingly well in the acidic, anaerobic conditions of the peat bog, the idol's age alone invites awe. Yet it is not merely its antiquity that captivates, it is the intricacy of its design. The sculpture is segmented into a series of panels, each etched with repeating geometric patterns, zigzags, chevrons, and parallel lines, interspersed with anthropomorphic figures that seem to watch silently from every angle. Scholars have long debated the function of the idol. Was it a religious or ritual object? Perhaps a totem representing deities, ancestors, or spiritual forces? Or was it a mnemonic device, encoding knowledge, stories, or cosmological concepts for a society that left no written record? The repetition of patterns suggests a symbolic system, yet one that remains indecipherable to us. Could it have conveyed narratives, myths, or moral codes to its contemporary audience? Or was it intended as a focal point in ceremonies lost to time? And if it was ritualistic, what kind of spiritual worldview might have motivated its creation nearly 12,000 years ago, in the twilight of the last ice age? The anthropomorphic features carved into the idol add another layer of intrigue. Faces, eyes, and abstract human forms emerge from the geometric framework, but they are stylized, almost alien in appearance. Some researchers propose that these represent spirits or ancestors, watching over the community or serving as intermediaries between the human and natural worlds. Others suggest a cosmological function, that the carvings encode star patterns, seasonal cycles, or calendrical information vital for survival in the harsh Siberian environment. Yet, despite the numerous hypotheses, no consensus has emerged. The patterns, the faces, and the very proportions of the idol resist definitive interpretation, as if intentionally crafted to confound and endure. The context of the idol's discovery further enhances its mystique. Buried in a peat bog, the Shigir Idol was preserved in a landscape that has shifted dramatically over millennia. At the time of its creation, the surrounding area would have been forested, a mixture of taiga and steppe, inhabited by hunter-gatherer communities. How and why the idol came to rest in its subterranean location remains uncertain. Was it deliberately buried as part of a ritual, an offering to the spirits of the land, or to protect it from decay or human interference? Or did it fall into the peat naturally, only to be preserved by the rare conditions that make peat bogs such extraordinary time capsules? The size of the idol also invites speculation. Standing over 5 meters tall, it was an imposing presence, likely visible from a distance and demanding attention from all who approached it. The act of carving such a monumental figure from a single larch trunk implies not only technical skill, but also social organization. Did the community mobilize labor specifically for this task? And if so, what social or spiritual impetus drove them to create an object of such scale and complexity? The very effort suggests profound reverence, a recognition that this sculpture carried significance far beyond mere decoration. Some interpretations have looked to ethnography for insight, comparing the idol to later Siberian and circumpolar shamanic traditions. In these traditions, wooden poles, carved figures, and abstract symbols often serve as tools for spiritual communication, ritual mediation, and social cohesion. Could the Shigir Idol be an ancestral precursor, an early manifestation of shamanic practice, or even a repository of collective memory for a society that lacked written records? And if so, what might the carvings reveal about beliefs, social structure, or the understanding of the natural and supernatural worlds of those who created it? Modern analysis has brought new revelations and new puzzles. High-resolution scans reveal that the sculpture was assembled from multiple pieces of wood, suggesting that it may have been reconstructed or modified over time. The carvings show varying depths and tools, implying a prolonged process of creation or maintenance. Some patterns appear to have been added generations after the initial carving, hinting that the idol may have functioned as a living object within its community, continually adapted to reflect changing ritual practices, cosmological interpretations, or social needs. Could this indicate a continuity of belief, stretching across centuries, even as individual communities rose and fell? Fringe theories have also emerged, exploring the idol from speculative perspectives. Some have suggested astronomical alignments, or even connections to lost civilizations and prehistoric knowledge systems, while others posit symbolic representations of Ice Age fauna, celestial phenomena, or encoded maps of the landscape. While these ideas remain conjectural, their very existence underscores the depth of mystery surrounding the Shigir Idol. It is not merely an artifact. It is a question etched in wood, challenging modern observers to confront the limits of understanding when faced with a culture and worldview so distant from our own. The Shigir Idol invites contemplation not only of its creators, but also of the passage of time itself. To survive for nearly 12,000 years, through climate shifts, human migration, and the gradual decay of organic material, is extraordinary. Yet it is more than mere survival. It is preservation of intent, design, and symbolic resonance. In its etched patterns, one senses a deliberate attempt to communicate, to endure, and to structure knowledge or belief in a tangible public form. What does this tell us about the cognitive and cultural capacities of early Holocene communities in Siberia? And what does it imply about the universality of human impulse to encode meaning, ritual, and memory in physical form? Standing before images of the Shigir Idol, or imagining it in its original forested context, one cannot escape the sense of presence. Its eyes, though carved and abstract, seem to watch across time, bridging the gap between hunter-gatherer societies and our modern curiosity. Each line, spiral, and face speaks to human ingenuity, intention, and a desire to confront mortality, environment, and the unknown. How did its creators perceive the world? What inspired them to commit such effort and vision to a single wooden trunk, ensuring that future generations would encounter their work? And what stories, rituals, or knowledge have been lost, leaving only this enigmatic effigy as a witness to a vanished culture? The Shigir Idol reminds us that mystery is not only found in manuscripts, tombs, or monumental earthworks, but also in the materials and forms that humans leave behind to communicate across time. It challenges us to interpret the unfamiliar with patience and imagination, to recognize the layers of meaning embedded in material culture, and to acknowledge how much remains hidden from our understanding. Even with advanced imaging, analysis, and comparative studies, the idol resists full comprehension, a silent interlocutor from a world long vanished, yet still capable of provoking wonder and reflection. As we consider the Shigir Idol, we are confronted with a question that echoes through every mystery we have explored in this journey. What drives humans to create, preserve, and encode meaning in objects intended to endure beyond their own lifetimes? And, more importantly, how much of the knowledge, belief, and intention embedded in such creations remains hidden, awaiting discovery, interpretation, or even imagination to bring it to life once more? The Shigir Idol, rising from the Siberian peat, offers no answers, only questions, and the profound reminder that history is as much about what is lost as it is about what survives. From the silent, peat-preserved Shigir Idol of Siberia, which speaks across 12 millennia in abstract patterns and faces, we travel now to the sun-baked plains of central Mexico, where the ancient city of Teotihuacan rises from the past in monumental symmetry. Among its grand avenues and pyramids, one structure captures attention not only for its scale, but for its intricate symbolism and the questions it continues to provoke. The Temple of the Feathered Serpent, or Quetzalcoatl Pyramid, a creation of stone and ritual that embodies the intersection of architecture, cosmology, and human belief. The Temple of the Feathered Serpent dominates the Ciudadela complex at Teotihuacan, standing as a testament to the skill, vision, and spiritual imagination of a culture whose names and rulers largely remain unknown. Rising in tiers of stone, its facades are adorned with hundreds of carved heads, representing both the feathered serpent deity Quetzalcoatl and the rain god Tlaloc. The precision and repetition of these figures convey not only craftsmanship but symbolic intent, a deliberate fusion of natural, spiritual, and civic authority. Viewed from the Pyramid of the Sun or the Avenue of the Dead, the temple asserts its presence as both a physical and ritual center, a focal point for the city's population, estimated at over 100,000 inhabitants at its height. Scholars date the temple's construction to around 200 to 250 AD, during the early zenith of Teotihuacan's urban expansion. Yet, despite its prominence, many aspects of the temple remain mysterious. The identities of those who commissioned it, the precise rituals conducted within, and the meaning of its complex iconography continue to elude modern interpretation. The feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, appears across Mesoamerican cultures as a symbol of creation, fertility, and the connection between earth and sky. Yet in Teotihuacan, the deity is represented not in a singular image, but in hundreds of repeating heads, carved in stone, suggesting both multiplicity and universality. Why this repetition? Does it signify a pantheon of forces, a lineage of rulers, or a ritual narrative encoded in stone? Beneath the temple, archaeologists have uncovered a labyrinthine network of tunnels and chambers, a subterranean extension that amplifies the mystery. These passages are aligned with remarkable precision, often mirroring the temple above, and contain caches of offerings, jaguar bones, shells, obsidian blades, and greenstone figures. Some scholars propose that the underground chambers were constructed as symbolic underworlds, reflecting Mesoamerican cosmology in which life, death, and regeneration are intertwined. Others suggest that the tunnels were ritual spaces, sites of initiation or platforms for communication with the gods. How did the architects and builders conceptualize these subterranean realms, and what ceremonies might have unfolded in spaces now inaccessible and shadowed by centuries of soil and sediment? The temple's iconography adds layers of ambiguity. The heads of the feathered serpent and Tlaloc are interspersed with smaller symbols, abstract patterns, glyph-like designs, and motifs whose meaning remains uncertain. Was this a sacred narrative carved in stone, a visual text conveying myth, astronomy, or history? Some researchers have suggested that the repeated serpent heads reflect the passage of time, celestial cycles, or cosmic order, aligning ritual with observable astronomical phenomena. Others propose that the iconography represents political power, a visual assertion of authority by Teotihuacan's rulers, asserting their right to mediate between human and divine realms. Could it be that the temple served multiple purposes at once? Ritual, political, cosmological, and that its symbolism was intended to be interpreted differently by priests, elites, and the general populace? The context of discovery further deepens the intrigue. Excavations in the 20th and 21st centuries revealed skeletal remains of what appear to be sacrificial victims, carefully placed within the temple's structure and foundations. These findings have prompted debates about ritual violence, religious observance, and social control. Were these sacrifices offerings to ensure agricultural fertility, celestial favor, or the continued stability of the city? Or were they symbolic acts, a deliberate performance to consolidate political authority and communal cohesion? And how did the inhabitants of Teotihuacan perceive these acts? As sacred obligation, civic duty, or fear-inducing spectacle? Beyond the architectural and archaeological evidence, the temple invites speculation on cultural connections. The feathered serpent appears not only in Teotihuacan, but throughout Mesoamerica, from the Maya lowlands to the highlands of Guatemala. Did this symbol represent a shared spiritual tradition spanning vast distances, a network of ideas transmitted orally, ritually, and visually across centuries? Or did it emerge independently within Teotihuacan, crystallizing a local cosmology that would later influence other cultures? The movement of symbols and ideas, much like the movement of people and goods, leaves tantalizing traces but rarely complete explanations, reinforcing the sense of mystery that surrounds the temple. The temple's construction itself challenges our understanding of early urban planning and engineering. Large blocks of stone were quarried, shaped, and transported with remarkable precision, while the alignment of the structure with the Avenue of the Dead and neighboring pyramids indicates an advanced understanding of geometry and urban design. The repetition of serpent heads required extraordinary skill and coordination, suggesting a workforce organized not only for labor, but for precision artistry. Could the scale and refinement of this labor reflect the social and spiritual priorities of Teotihuacan? A civilization whose power was expressed as much through ritual and symbolic architecture as through material wealth or military might? Some fringe interpretations explore the possibility of encoded knowledge within the temple's design. From astronomical alignments to hidden tunnels, from symbolic numerology to complex ritual choreography, scholars and enthusiasts alike have speculated that the temple might contain lost wisdom, knowledge of cosmology, cycles of time, or spiritual practice that eludes modern comprehension. While these hypotheses remain speculative, their persistence reflects the enduring power of the temple to provoke wonder, curiosity, and deep reflection on the ingenuity of its creators. Standing today in the shadow of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, one can imagine the city at its height, processions along the Avenue of the Dead, ceremonies echoing through plazas and pyramids, and priests or rulers mediating between human and divine realms within the temple's stone corridors. The carvings of serpents and deities seem to breathe with life, their repetition both reassuring and unsettling, as if the temple itself remembers a time when the cosmos was understood differently, when the sacred and the mundane were inseparable. How did the inhabitants of Teotihuacan perceive these carvings, these tunnels, and these rituals? And what meanings, known to them, remain inaccessible to us, hidden in the precise geometry of stone, the shadowed passages beneath, and the echoes of long-forgotten ceremonies? The Temple of the Feathered Serpent reminds us that mystery is not confined to the distant past or obscure artifacts. It is constructed in stone and labor, embedded in cosmology and carried forward in cultural memory. Its creators have left us clues, deliberate and intricate, yet the full message remains just beyond our grasp. Like the Shigir Idol, like the Voynich Manuscript, and like Akhenaten's lost tomb, the temple challenges modern observers to consider the limits of interpretation, the persistence of symbolism, and the profound human desire to encode meaning across time and space. As the sun casts long shadows across the stepped terraces of the temple, the feathered serpents seem to undulate, their stone eyes watching across the centuries. And as we reflect on the rituals, sacrifices, and symbolism embedded in this monumental creation, one is left with an open-ended question. What knowledge, beliefs, or messages were intended to endure, and what remains hidden, waiting for discovery, reflection, or imagination to reveal its secrets to those who seek them? From the monumental stone and serpentine symbolism of Teotihuacan, we turn once more to the deserts and tombs of Egypt, where the sands preserve secrets both monumental and hidden. Among the many enigmas of ancient Egypt lies a mystery that has eluded historians and archaeologists alike: the forgotten tomb of the pharaoh's high priest, a figure of immense spiritual and political influence whose final resting place has remained hidden for millennia. Unlike the tombs of kings, whose grandeur and visibility have long invited both preservation and plunder, the high priest's tomb is whispered of in fragments, gleaned from inscriptions, papyri, and the careful study of temple complexes. Yet it has never been definitively located, its contents unknown, and its significance tantalizingly out of reach. High priests in ancient Egypt were more than mere religious functionaries. They were intermediaries between the divine and the mortal realms, wielding influence over both the pharaoh and the priesthood of the gods. Their authority extended to ritual, economy, and governance, particularly within the temples of powerful deities such as Amun, Ra, and Osiris. The high priest's role in life was visible, structured, and documented. His role in death, however, is obscured, a deliberate reflection of secrecy and sanctity. What might have motivated the concealment of such a tomb? Was it a precaution against tomb robbers, a reflection of spiritual humility, or an intentional act to protect the knowledge and rituals contained within from those deemed unworthy? Historical texts reference high priests whose power rivaled that of pharaohs themselves, particularly during periods of political instability. Inscriptions and reliefs depict them conducting elaborate rituals, overseeing the construction of temples, and maintaining the cosmic order through sacred ceremonies. Yet even as their deeds were recorded, the resting places of many were deliberately understated or concealed, often outside the main necropolises of kings. Could the forgotten tomb have been designed not merely as a burial chamber, but as a sacred repository, containing arcane knowledge, ritual texts, or artifacts whose meaning was intended to remain hidden from the uninitiated? The geography of the tomb's likely location is itself a subject of speculation. Scholars point to areas near major temple complexes, Luxor, Karnak, and Thebes, yet the tomb has never been conclusively identified. Some suggest it lies beneath layers of sand and debris, unexcavated or deliberately sealed by subsequent rulers. Others hypothesize it may have been hidden in the cliffs and valleys surrounding the Nile, shielded from looters and explorers by natural barriers. What circumstances led to its disappearance from memory, and how many such tombs may lie undisturbed, hidden beneath the vast deserts of Egypt, their secrets preserved by time and obscurity? The architecture of a high priest's tomb, based on fragments from related burials, may have been both functional and symbolic. Unlike royal pyramids, these tombs were often more modest in scale but rich in ritual meaning. Chambers might have been adorned with hieroglyphs, reliefs, and painted scenes depicting the journey of the soul, the pantheon of gods, and the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Could such decoration have contained coded instructions for the afterlife, or concealed wisdom meant only for the initiated? And what of the funerary artifacts themselves? Vessels, amulets, and ritual implements crafted to assist the high priest in navigating the realms beyond. Evidence from other high priests' burials offers tantalizing clues. Tombs that have been discovered reveal extraordinary craftsmanship. Stone sarcophagi, ceremonial masks, and intricately inscribed stelae. Yet none fully answer the question of the priest's influence in death. Some scholars argue that the deliberate secrecy surrounding these tombs reflects a dual concern: protection from looting and the safeguarding of knowledge that could confer spiritual or temporal power. Could the forgotten tomb of the pharaoh's high priest contain objects of unprecedented significance, whose discovery might illuminate aspects of Egyptian ritual, governance, or theology that remain hidden to this day? Fringe theories and speculative interpretations abound, though none are conclusive. Some suggest that high priests were custodians of esoteric knowledge, including astrological, mathematical, or even prophetic insights. Others speculate that hidden chambers might connect to subterranean networks beneath the temples themselves, offering a secret passage through which the priest could perform rituals unseen by ordinary worshippers. While these ideas cannot be verified, they underscore the allure of the mystery. An entire domain of influence and power, deliberately obscured from posterity and preserved only in fragments of inscriptions, ritual texts, and oral traditions. The high priest's disappearance from the historical record also raises questions about succession, politics, and social memory. When a high priest passed away, his tomb would serve as a testament to both his spiritual and temporal role. Yet political upheaval, dynastic shifts, foreign invasions, and religious reforms often led to the systematic erasure or concealment of such tombs. Could the forgotten tomb represent not merely a loss, but a deliberate act of historical revision, a removal of memory to prevent the resurgence of a lineage's influence, or the revelation of sacred knowledge? The archaeological quest for the tomb presents its own challenges. Excavations in ancient necropolises are fraught with both practical and ethical considerations. Shifting sands, water tables, and the risk of damaging fragile artifacts all impede discovery. Furthermore, many potential sites remain unexplored, protected by law, or simply inaccessible due to modern development. Could it be that the high priest's tomb rests beneath a hill or temple complex, its entrance obscured by centuries of sediment, awaiting the right combination of technology, intuition, and patience to reveal its secrets? Symbolically, the mystery of the forgotten tomb is inseparable from the role of the high priest in Egyptian society. These individuals were custodians of the sacred, interpreters of divine will, and guardians of cosmic order. In life, they wielded profound influence. In death, their power seems to have been preserved in secrecy. The very act of concealment may have been an extension of their authority, a final ritual act ensuring that only those deemed worthy might access the knowledge and power contained within. What rituals, prayers, or curses might protect such a tomb, and what wisdom, lost to the ages, might be preserved within its walls, waiting silently beneath layers of sand and stone? Standing at the threshold of speculation, one is struck by the enduring tension between visibility and concealment. Tombs of pharaohs are known, catalogued, and studied. Yet the high priest's resting place resists discovery, as if the very act of secrecy is a final statement of intent. Could it be that the unknown location was deliberate, a testament to humility, foresight, or strategic thinking? Or might it reflect a deeper understanding of death, preservation, and the transmission of sacred knowledge that we have yet to fully comprehend? The forgotten tomb of the pharaoh's high priest reminds us that history is not a record of only kings and empires, but also of those who shaped the spiritual and intellectual life of a civilization. It invites reflection on the fragility of memory, the impermanence of even the most sacred spaces, and the mysteries that endure precisely because they were meant to endure, hidden from the eyes of all but the initiated. How many stories, wisdom, and rituals remain interred, waiting to be rediscovered? What might we learn about the spiritual and political complexities of ancient Egypt if this tomb is ever found? And perhaps, most hauntingly, is it truly lost or merely waiting in silence, its guardianship intact for the centuries yet to come? As the desert wind sweeps across the ruins of temples and necropolises, we are reminded that for every tomb discovered, there may be one intentionally hidden, challenging modern observers to reconcile the evidence of history with the shadows of secrecy. The Pharaoh's high priest, in life and death, embodies the delicate balance of power, knowledge, and mystery, leaving us to wonder what lies beneath the sands, and how much of the sacred, the secret, and the profound still waits for discovery. From the hidden tombs of Egypt's high priests, whose secrecy conceals centuries of ritual, power, and lost knowledge, we now journey southward across the shifting deserts of Sudan to a land where pyramids rise not in colossal proportions, but in striking, slender forms, markers of a civilization that thrived along the banks of the Nile and yet remains shrouded in mystery. The pyramids of Meroe, scattered across a desert plain with sharp, angular silhouettes, stand as silent witnesses to the kingdom of Kush, a culture that rivaled ancient Egypt in power, wealth, and sophistication, and yet left many questions unanswered about its rulers, religion, and technological mastery. Meroe, situated roughly 200 kilometers northeast of modern Khartoum, was the epicenter of the Kushite kingdom from around 800 BC to 350 AD. Unlike the massive pyramids of Giza, the pyramids here are comparatively modest in scale, their steep angles and compact bases giving them a distinctive, almost otherworldly presence. Hundreds of these pyramids, built as burial sites for kings, queens, and elite officials, dominate the horizon, arranged in clusters across several necropolises. Each structure, though smaller in size, is remarkable for its precision, alignment, and symbolic resonance, reflecting the Kushites' spiritual worldview and their desire to memorialize both the living and the dead in stone. The construction of these pyramids raises immediate intrigue. Carved sandstone blocks were quarried and transported with considerable effort, yet the methods remain partially obscure. How did a civilization situated far from the large stone quarries of Egypt manage such engineering feats in a semi-arid environment, using technology that was advanced for its time yet leaves no complete record? Did the Kushites draw on knowledge from their northern neighbors, or did they develop independent techniques, adapting local materials and environmental conditions to achieve monumental results? And what drove the creation of hundreds of pyramids when so few societies of comparable scale undertook such ambitious mortuary architecture? The pyramids were more than tombs. They were symbols of authority, cosmology, and spiritual connection. Hieroglyphic inscriptions, reliefs, and stelae found in some of the larger pyramids reference rituals, offerings, and kingship, yet many remain partially unreadable, weathered by centuries of sun and wind. Some pyramids were dedicated to queens, reflecting the significant roles of royal women in Kushite society, a facet that distinguishes it from contemporary cultures and invites speculation about matrilineal influence, political power, and religious authority. What does this tell us about social organization in Kush? Were queens spiritual intermediaries, political strategists, or both? And how did the Kushites perceive the journey to the afterlife, a concept so deeply tied to the pyramid's function? Beyond their physical construction, the pyramids raise questions of symbolism and purpose. The steep angles, narrow bases, and placement within the desert landscape may have held cosmological significance, aligning with celestial events, the Nile's cycles, or ritual pathways. Some scholars suggest that the pyramids were designed as a bridge between earth and sky, facilitating the deceased ruler's ascent to the divine. Could these structures encode knowledge of astronomy, timekeeping, or the seasons, providing a functional as well as spiritual role for those who designed them? And why do so many of these pyramids remain small and compact, seemingly at odds with the grandeur expected of royal burials? Excavations in Meroe have revealed burial chambers filled with artifacts, jewelry, pottery, weapons, and imported goods from Egypt, the Mediterranean, and sub-Saharan Africa. These finds point to a society engaged in trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange, yet they also hint at the mysteries that endure. Some pyramids remain unexplored or partially excavated, and looting over the centuries has removed or destroyed much of the original context. Could undiscovered tombs hold artifacts, texts, or ritual objects that might radically alter our understanding of the Kushite kingdom and its connections to other ancient civilizations? Fringe theories and speculative ideas surround Meroe as well. Some suggest that the pyramids may contain hidden astronomical or mathematical knowledge, encoded in their dimensions, orientation, or design. Others propose that the Kushites maintained a mystical or secretive tradition, blending Egyptian religious practices with indigenous beliefs to create a system of kingship and ritual that is only partially visible to modern eyes. Could the repetition of pyramids across multiple necropolises indicate an intentional symbolic pattern? A narrative expressed across the landscape, readable only to initiates of the Kushite spiritual hierarchy? The pyramids of Meroe also challenge assumptions about the flow of influence in the ancient world. While the Kushites were influenced by Egypt, they maintained cultural independence, developing their own forms of writing, art, and religious practice. The pyramids, then, are not merely copies of Egyptian models. They are statements of identity, of power, and of spiritual philosophy. How did these monumental constructions shape the worldview of the Kushites, and what do they reveal about a civilization whose memory has often been overshadowed by that of its northern neighbor? The sheer number of pyramids, arranged in clusters across the desert, creates a visual and emotional impression that is hard to convey in words. Standing among them, one feels the weight of centuries pressing down, the meticulous labor of generations etched into stone, and the intent of rulers determined to assert their presence beyond death. Each pyramid is a statement, a silent witness to a society that valued spiritual continuity, cosmological alignment, and the preservation of memory. How did ordinary citizens view these structures? Were they sacred spaces, loci of ritual, or markers of political hierarchy visible from miles across the sands? Even the desert itself contributes to the mystery. Sand and wind both preserve and erode, revealing pyramids slowly while hiding others beneath shifting dunes. Could undiscovered pyramids lie buried, waiting for a chance to emerge, their contents revealing untold secrets of kingship, religion, and society? And what of the rituals performed here? Celebrations, offerings, or ceremonies now lost entirely to history, leaving only stone as testimony to human intention. The pyramids of Meroe remind us that history is not only written in texts or monumental tombs of well-known kings, but also in structures that bear witness to civilizations whose stories have been partially obscured. They are a meditation on permanence and impermanence, on memory and loss, and on the ingenuity of humans seeking to preserve authority, spirituality, and culture across time. What lessons remain hidden within their walls? What knowledge encoded in stone? And how much of the Kushite worldview awaits rediscovery beneath the desert sands? As the sun sets over the Meroitic plains, casting long shadows across the clustered pyramids, the landscape itself seems to whisper questions. What drove this civilization to create hundreds of monumental tombs in the harsh desert? What beliefs, rituals, or wisdom were enshrined here, intended to endure long after their builders were gone? And what secrets, still hidden beneath the sands, await the patient eye, the careful excavation, or the imagination willing to bridge millennia of silence? From the sands of Sudan and the pyramids of Meroe, we travel now across continents and centuries, from Africa to the towering Andes of South America, to a place where mountains pierce the sky and rivers carve deep valleys into the earth. Here, high above the clouds, the Incas once built a civilization that stretched along the spine of the continent. Their cities and temples a testament to ingenuity, organization, and devotion to the divine. Among the many marvels left behind, one object continues to defy explanation: the mysterious stone, an artifact whose size, precision, and apparent defiance of conventional engineering has captivated scholars, explorers, and enthusiasts for generations. The stone resides in Ollantaytambo, one of the most impressive and well-preserved Inca sites, a fortress and ceremonial center overlooking the Urubamba River in present-day Peru. Unlike the massive terraces and walls that characterize the Incas' architectural genius, this particular stone stands out because of its size and fit. Weighing an estimated 350 tons and quarried from a site miles away, it is seamlessly integrated into a massive wall, its edges perfectly cut to match surrounding blocks with astonishing precision. The surface is smooth, the angles exact, and no mortar is visible. For centuries, visitors have marveled at how the Incas achieved this feat, and why this single stone seems to exceed the scale of all other constructions at Ollantaytambo. Traditional archaeology offers explanations rooted in Inca ingenuity. Scholars emphasize their mastery of stoneworking techniques, their use of bronze tools, hammers and chisels, along with careful planning, labor coordination, and simple machines such as ramps, levers, and ropes. These theories suggest that the stone, though enormous, was moved through ingenious human effort, employing thousands of laborers over weeks or months, and guided with meticulous surveying techniques. Yet even with this knowledge, the sheer magnitude of the undertaking challenges the imagination. How did a civilization without draft animals capable of carrying such weight manage to transport and lift the stone to its position atop the terrace walls? And how did they shape its base so precisely that it locks in place without gaps, a feat that has resisted replication even with modern tools? The context of the stone's placement adds to its mystery. The terraces of Ollantaytambo were designed not only for defense, but also for ritual and agricultural purposes, blending practical engineering with spiritual intent. Some researchers suggest that the stone's position at the uppermost level of the wall was deliberate, perhaps symbolic, indicating a hierarchy of sacred space or representing the power and authority of Inca rulers. Was this stone a structural necessity, or was it meant to be a visual and ceremonial focal point, commanding reverence and awe from those who approached? Beyond its sheer size, the stone raises questions about Inca cosmology and symbolism. The Incas viewed the landscape as imbued with spiritual energy, or huacas, and aligned their constructions with astronomical and geographical features. Could this stone have been selected and positioned for reasons beyond structural stability, perhaps as a spiritual marker, a conduit for cosmic energy, or a symbol of connection between earth and sky? Some anthropologists propose that the Incas saw stones not merely as building material, but as living entities, vessels of power and sacred resonance. Does this stone, in its singularity and prominence, embody such belief, a material representation of the intersection of human labor and divine purpose? Further intrigue comes from the methods of quarrying. Archaeologists have identified the likely source of the stone as a quarry, several kilometers from Ollantaytambo, a distance that would require careful transport over steep valleys, rivers, and rugged terrain. Yet traces of finished stone blocks en route or evidence of rollers, sledges, or other transportation mechanisms are scarce. How were these colossal pieces maneuvered across the landscape, lifted and set with precision, without the use of wheeled vehicles or draft animals capable of handling such weight? Could there have been methods lost to history, techniques known only to the Inca builders and their forebears? And if so, why have these techniques not left more visible traces or survived in oral or written form? Fringe and speculative theories abound. Some propose that the stone represents knowledge or technology beyond conventional Inca capabilities, from advanced levers and ramps to unknown mechanical systems. Others suggest metaphysical interpretations, that the stone was guided into place with ritual, spiritual, or even mystical means in accordance with the Incas' belief in the sacred power of stones and the earth itself. While these ideas cannot be empirically verified, they highlight the sense of wonder and mystery that surrounds the artifact, emphasizing the ways in which human imagination interacts with historical puzzles. The stone also invites reflection on human labor and organization. Thousands of workers would have been involved, their efforts coordinated under the supervision of architects, priests, and rulers. Each cut, each movement, each placement required calculation, skill, and discipline, reflecting a society capable of complex planning and precise execution. How did such coordination shape the lives of those who labored, and what rituals, prayers, or ceremonies accompanied the construction, both to sanctify the work and to ensure its success? The stone, silent and immovable, evokes not only human achievement but human devotion, the dedication required to turn monumental vision into reality. Examining the stone in situ, one is struck by the fit of its edges. Even the smallest gap would compromise the stability of the wall, yet it locks perfectly with its neighbors, a precision that continues to puzzle modern engineers. Some suggest that the Incas understood principles of weight distribution, friction, and material stress that allowed them to accomplish this feat, combining empirical knowledge with experience honed over generations. Yet the question lingers: how did this knowledge emerge, and why was it applied so consistently and skillfully in certain locations and not others? The mysterious stone serves as a reminder that even in civilizations well studied by archaeologists, there remain objects that defy full explanation. It challenges our assumptions about the limits of pre-modern technology, the intersection of practicality and ritual, and the ways in which societies express power, spirituality, and ingenuity through monumental construction. Could there be more stones like this, hidden or unrecognized, waiting to reveal the full scope of Inca capability? And what might the stone tell us about a worldview in which labor, faith, and cosmology were inseparably intertwined? As we stand in the shadow of this massive rock, overlooking the terraces and walls of Ollantaytambo, the Andes rising behind us, the sense of mystery is palpable. The stone commands attention, not simply because of its size, but because of what it represents: a convergence of human skill, belief, and audacity. A question etched in granite and granite-like precision. How did the Incas achieve what seems impossible to our modern eyes? And why did they choose this particular stone, this specific place, and this exact form to immortalize their vision? The mysterious stone of the Incas invites reflection on the limits of understanding, the ingenuity of past civilizations, and the enduring presence of mystery in human history. It reminds us that for every structure uncovered, for every artifact catalogued, there exists the possibility that its full story remains just beyond reach, encoded in material, environment, and intent. And it compels us to ask, what knowledge, ritual, or ingenuity has been lost to time, preserved only in the silent weight and perfect fit of a stone that continues to defy explanation? From the lofty heights of the Andes, where the Incas left behind stones that continue to defy explanation, our journey now carries us eastward, across the Pacific, to the islands of Japan. Here, amidst verdant hills and coastal plains, lie the Kofun burial mounds, monumental earthworks whose sheer scale and enigmatic origins speak of a civilization asserting power, spirituality, and legacy in ways both familiar and deeply mysterious. These earthen tombs, built over a span of centuries from the 3rd to the 7th century AD, are some of the largest and most enigmatic structures in Japanese history, their keyhole-shaped mounds visible for miles, and their contents, both human and material, offering tantalizing glimpses into a world that remains partially obscured by time. The Kofun, deriving their name from the Japanese word for ancient tomb, are immediately striking in their form. Many are shaped like keyholes when viewed from above, a circular mound connected to a rectangular platform. Others take the form of simple circles, squares, or more complex combinations. The largest, such as the Daisen Kofun in Osaka, stretches over 400 meters in length, encircled by moats and layered terraces, dwarfing almost every subsequent construction in the region. Even without entering these mounds, their presence dominates the landscape, asserting both authority and permanence. What vision drove the builders to craft tombs on such an ambitious scale? Was it purely political, a statement of dominance, or did it serve a deeper ritual and spiritual purpose, a bridge between the living and the realm of ancestors? Construction of the Kofun required extraordinary planning, labor, and resource management. Layers of earth, gravel, and stones were transported from surrounding regions, often over challenging terrain, to form massive mounds topped with wooden or stone burial chambers. The sophistication of their internal structure indicates more than mere graves. They were carefully designed ceremonial spaces intended to preserve both the body and status of the deceased. In some cases, haniwa, ceramic figures shaped as warriors, animals, or ritual objects, were placed on the surfaces and surrounding terraces, perhaps as guardians, symbols, or representations of life continuing in the afterworld. How did the builders coordinate such efforts across communities? And what social structures or belief systems enabled this feat of engineering over multiple generations? The mounds are more than feats of engineering. They are repositories of mystery. Excavations have revealed a complex array of artifacts: bronze mirrors, iron weapons, jewelry, and ceremonial objects. The largest tombs often belong to figures presumed to be rulers, chieftains, or members of elite families, yet historical records are scarce, leaving identities largely speculative. Who were the individuals entombed within these mounds? What powers, both temporal and spiritual, did they wield? And why were some mounds constructed on scales vastly exceeding others? Was size a reflection of status, cosmological significance, or something even more profound, now lost to history? Some of the Kofun are surrounded by moats, both symbolic and practical, further complicating our understanding. Were these barriers purely defensive, or did they serve as ritual separators, delineating the sacred domain of the dead from the realm of the living? Many mounds are aligned with natural features, rivers, hills, and the rising sun, suggesting astronomical or cosmological considerations in their placement. Could these alignments have had practical functions, serving as calendars or indicators for agricultural cycles? Or were they symbolic pathways connecting the deceased to celestial deities? And if so, how much of this knowledge was encoded visually, ritually, or orally, preserved in memory rather than stone or earth? The haniwa figures add another layer of intrigue. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, encircle a mound, each carefully shaped and fired. Some depict warriors with detailed armor. Others depict animals, boats, or ceremonial objects. These figures evoke questions about identity, social hierarchy, and ritual practice. Were they meant to accompany the deceased, to protect them, or to symbolize the world they left behind? The specificity and diversity of Haniwa forms suggest a sophisticated symbolic language, yet much of its meaning remains opaque. How did those who built these figures perceive them, and how was their symbolism transmitted across generations in a culture that left no written explanation accompanying these silent guardians? While many Kofun have been excavated, countless others remain unexplored or restricted, preserving secrets beneath their earth and stone layers. Some tombs are suspected to contain vast treasures or ritual objects, yet the fear of destruction, looting, or cultural disruption has limited exploration. Could there be chambers containing objects or texts that radically alter our understanding of early Japanese society, its connection to neighboring cultures, or the spiritual cosmology that informed its monumental architecture? And what of the people themselves, whose lives were devoted to constructing, consecrating, and maintaining these enormous sites? What can their labor, artistry, and coordination tell us about the social and political organization of early Japan? Fringe theories occasionally emerge, proposing alternative explanations for the Kofun's construction and purpose. Some suggest advanced surveying techniques, lost technologies, or even mystical methods guided the placement and shaping of the mounds. Others speculate that the Kofun may encode astronomical, numerical, or spiritual knowledge, creating a landscape in which each tomb is not merely a resting place, but a node within a cosmic map. While these ideas remain speculative, they highlight the persistent fascination these structures hold, demonstrating that even in a society often understood through archaeology and anthropology, some questions remain intentionally or circumstantially unanswered. The scale and ambition of the Kofun also provoke reflection on mortality and memory. Unlike modest graves, these monumental earthworks were intended to endure, visible across generations, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape. What did the builders hope to convey to those who would live centuries later, who would stand at the base of a mound and gaze upward, seeing not just a tomb, but a statement of authority, continuity, and connection to the ancestral past? And how might these tombs have shaped the worldview of those living among them, bridging the temporal gap between human life, ritual practice, and the enduring landscape? The Kofun remind us that mystery does not always reside in secrecy alone. Sometimes it lies in scale, in the accumulation of labor and intent, in the choices made about placement, form, and orientation. Each mound is a complex text written in earth, stone, and ceramic, its message partially accessible but largely enigmatic. How did the interplay of politics, religion, and cosmology inform their creation? And what insights, now buried beneath centuries of soil, might one day illuminate the lives, beliefs, and ambitions of the early Japanese rulers and the people who supported them? Standing amid a cluster of Kofun, one senses a profound human desire to be remembered, to assert authority beyond mortality, and to shape a legacy that intertwines life, death, and the sacred. Yet, with every step along these mounds, questions abound. Why were some tombs so massive while others were modest? What rituals took place upon their terraces and within their ceremonial enclosures? How much knowledge was intentionally encoded in form, alignment, and the silent language of Haniwa, and how much has simply been lost to the passage of time? The Kofun burial mounds, like the mysterious stone of the Incas before them, challenge our assumptions about human ingenuity, belief, and ambition. They compel us to consider not only what can be measured and documented, but what lies beyond direct observation, the rituals, intentions, and spiritual frameworks that shaped their creation. And they leave us with a haunting, open-ended question. What remains hidden beneath the soil, waiting to reveal the lives, power, and mysteries of a civilization whose presence is etched in earth, stone, and memory, yet whose full story continues to elude us even today. From the monumental Kofun burial mounds of Japan, where the ambitions of rulers were etched into the landscape with earth and haniwa guardians, we now return to the arid expanses of South America, to a desert plain in Peru that stretches for hundreds of kilometers, sun-scorched, seemingly lifeless, yet hiding a secret visible only from the air. Here, amid the Nazca Desert, ancient hands created lines, shapes, and figures so enormous that they defy comprehension from the ground, etched directly into the earth in a feat of precision and vision that continues to challenge modern understanding. Among these geoglyphs, one figure stands out, both enigmatic and provocative: the so-called astronaut, a humanoid form whose outstretched limbs and circular head invite speculation, awe, and persistent questions about intention, symbolism, and capability. The Nazca Lines, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, were constructed between 500 BC and 500 AD by the Nazca culture in an environment so harsh that their survival required ingenuity, careful planning, and deep knowledge of local resources. The astronaut, perched amid a plateau of gravel and clay, measures roughly 32 meters from head to foot. Its head, large and rounded, appears to wear a circular helmet, while its body extends with thin, angular arms and legs, one hand raised as though in greeting or command. From the perspective of the desert floor, the figure appears abstract, almost unremarkable, yet from above, its form emerges with startling clarity, a monumental human-like silhouette preserved by the careful removal of oxidized stones to reveal lighter soil beneath. The technical aspects of creating such a figure are remarkable. Without aerial vantage points, telescopes, or modern surveying equipment, the Nazca people achieved precise proportions over enormous distances. Straight lines stretch for kilometers, curves bend with geometric fidelity, and the astronaut itself demonstrates symmetry and orientation that suggest an understanding of scale and perspective rarely attributed to pre-Columbian societies. How did the Nazca plan and execute such a figure without aerial reference? Were simple but ingenious tools, ropes, stakes, sightlines, enough? Or might there have been other techniques, now lost to time? And why choose such a humanoid form, one so unlike the naturalistic animals and geometric shapes that dominate the wider geoglyph collection? Mainstream archaeology provides context. Many scholars believe the geoglyphs, including the humanoid figure, were linked to water, fertility, and astronomical events. Lines may have pointed to aquifers, ritual pathways, or solstices, serving both practical and ceremonial purposes. The humanoid figure may have represented a deity, a shaman, or a symbolic intermediary between the people and forces beyond their comprehension. Could the figure have been a guide for ritual processions, its arms and head directing participants toward sacred sites or water sources? Or was it intended for spiritual observation from a hill or distant plateau? Yet, despite these explanations, the humanoid shape remains singular, a figure that defies easy categorization within the broader corpus of Nazca imagery. The enigmatic form has inspired other interpretations, some speculative and controversial. Its circular head and exaggerated limbs evoke modern notions of spacesuits or extraterrestrial beings, leading to the moniker astronaut. While no credible evidence supports this as an intentional depiction of beings from beyond Earth, the figure nonetheless raises compelling questions about human imagination, symbolism, and abstraction in ancient art. What did the Nazca intend the figure to convey? Was it a literal representation of a mythic or spiritual entity, a metaphor for authority or shamanic power, or a deliberate abstraction meant to be seen only from above, emphasizing perspective as a conceptual tool? And if the figure was designed for aerial viewing, what does that suggest about the Nazca's understanding of observation, distance, and the interplay between earth and sky? The desert itself contributes to the mystery. The arid climate, with minimal rainfall and stable soil, has preserved the lines and figures for over a millennium. Yet the same environment is unforgiving, making their creation arduous and their maintenance a challenge. Stones must be carefully removed, debris swept aside, and outlines maintained against wind and erosion. How did the Nazca organize such labor across hundreds of kilometers of desert? Was there a centralized authority coordinating these projects, or a distributed network of communities working in concert, guided by shared religious or social conventions? The effort required to maintain the clarity of these forms suggests not only technical skill, but profound cultural motivation. From the stark lines of the Nazca Desert, where humanoid figures stretch across the earth like whispers of the past, our journey now moves deep into a vastly different world, the dense, impenetrable, and humid heart of the Amazon rainforest. Here, beneath a canopy so thick that sunlight barely reaches the forest floor, rivers twist like serpents, and the air vibrates with the hum of life, lie signs of human presence long hidden, long forgotten, and only now slowly emerging from the obscurity of centuries. The hidden cities of the Amazon, once the domain of legend and speculation, are beginning to reveal themselves, not in the monumental stone of the Andes or the precise lines of Peru's desert, but in earthworks, mounds, and complex patterns etched into the forest, detectable only through careful observation, modern technology, and the persistence of the inquisitive eye. For centuries, European explorers and local legends spoke of civilizations lost to the jungle, of settlements so vast they could rival the cities of the Old World. Early accounts often dismissed such claims as exaggeration or myth, attributing them to the boundless imagination of travelers encountering an overwhelming wilderness. Yet, recent archaeological surveys, satellite imaging, and LiDAR, light detection and ranging scans, are beginning to change that perspective. Hidden beneath the thick canopy, ancient geometric earthworks, networked roads, plazas, and defensive embankments suggest that the Amazon was not the empty, untamed wilderness once imagined, but a landscape transformed by humans, carefully managed, cultivated, and inhabited by complex societies. Walking along the banks of the Amazon, one notices the subtle undulations in the earth, the raised ridges and circular depressions that hint at structures long swallowed by the forest. Archaeologists refer to these as geoglyphs, large-scale constructions of mounds, ditches, and platforms arranged in geometric patterns that seem deliberate and systematic. Some take the form of squares, circles, and trapezoids, while others follow the natural contours of rivers, integrating human design with the rhythm of the landscape. How were these structures planned and executed in a jungle so dense that visibility is often limited to a few meters? Could these societies have possessed a form of spatial knowledge, ritual coordination, or oral mapping that allowed them to impose geometry and order across vast forested expanses? The scale of the hidden cities is astonishing. LiDAR studies have revealed settlements spanning thousands of hectares, with interconnected roads and plazas suggesting centralized planning and social organization. Unlike the monumental stone architecture of the Inca or the precise mounds of Japan, these cities were largely built from earth, wood, and organic materials, which have mostly decayed over time. Yet traces remain, hinting at a civilization capable of coordinating massive communal labor and sophisticated agricultural systems. Could the Amazon, often perceived as wild and inhospitable, have once been a patchwork of cultivated fields, engineered waterways, and dense urban centers, thriving in ways that challenge our assumptions about pre-Columbian life? Mainstream archaeology provides partial explanations. Evidence suggests that the societies responsible for these earthworks practiced intensive agriculture, utilizing raised fields to mitigate flooding, enrich soil, and increase crop yield. Complex hydrological networks controlled water flow and prevented erosion, demonstrating a deep understanding of the rainforest's environmental dynamics. Yet even with these insights, many questions remain. How did these societies maintain communication across such expansive, dense terrain? What social, political, or spiritual systems coordinated the construction, maintenance, and ritual use of these vast networks? And why did so much of this civilization vanish, leaving behind only fragmented traces, oral legends, and enigmatic earthworks? The discovery of these hidden cities has sparked speculation about the Amazon's historical significance. Some researchers propose that the region may have supported millions of inhabitants prior to European contact, challenging long-held assumptions about the rainforest's carrying capacity. The scale and organization of these sites suggest social hierarchies, ritual centers, and trade networks previously unimagined. Could the Amazon have been home to a civilization comparable in sophistication to the great city-states of Mesoamerica, or even to parts of the Mediterranean? And if so, why did this knowledge disappear, obscured by centuries of ecological change, disease, and colonial disruption? Fringe and speculative theories have flourished alongside empirical studies. Some suggest that the geometrical precision of the earthworks hints at astronomical, cosmological, or ritual significance, with plazas, mounds, and alignments oriented toward solstices. From the stark lines of the Nazca Desert, where humanoid figures stretch across the earth like whispers of the past, our journey now moves deep into a vastly different world, the dense, impenetrable, and humid heart of the Amazon rainforest. Here, beneath a canopy so thick that sunlight barely reaches the forest floor, rivers twist like serpents, and the air vibrates with the hum of life, lie signs of human presence, long hidden, long forgotten, and only now slowly emerging from the obscurity of centuries. The hidden cities of the Amazon, once the domain of legend and speculation, are beginning to reveal themselves, not in the monumental stone of the Andes or the precise lines of Peru's desert, but in earthworks, mounds, and complex patterns etched into the forest, detectable only through careful observation, modern technology, and the persistence of the inquisitive eye. For centuries, European explorers and local legends spoke of civilizations lost to the jungle, of settlements so vast they could rival the cities of the Old World. Early accounts often dismissed such claims as exaggeration or myth, attributing them to the boundless imagination of travelers encountering an overwhelming wilderness. Yet, recent archaeological surveys, satellite imaging, and LiDAR, light detection and ranging, scans are beginning to change that perspective. Hidden beneath the thick canopy, ancient geometric earthworks, networked roads, plazas, and defensive embankments suggest that the Amazon was not the empty, untamed wilderness once imagined, but a landscape transformed by humans, carefully managed, cultivated, and inhabited by complex societies. Walking along the banks of the Amazon, one notices the subtle undulations in the earth, the raised ridges and circular depressions that hint at structures long swallowed by the forest. Archaeologists refer to these as geoglyphs, large-scale constructions of mounds, ditches, and platforms arranged in geometric patterns that seem deliberate and systematic. Some take the form of squares, circles, and trapezoids, while others follow the natural contours of rivers, integrating human design with the rhythm of the landscape. How were these structures planned and executed in a jungle so dense that visibility is often limited to a few meters? Could these societies have possessed a form of spatial knowledge, ritual coordination, or oral mapping that allowed them to impose geometry and order across vast forested expanses? The scale of the hidden cities is astonishing. LiDAR studies have revealed settlements spanning thousands of hectares, with interconnected roads and plazas suggesting centralized planning and social organization. Unlike the monumental stone architecture of the Inca or the precise mounds of Japan, These cities were largely built from earth, wood, and organic materials, which have mostly decayed over time. Yet traces remain, hinting at a civilization capable of coordinating massive communal labor and sophisticated agricultural systems. Could the Amazon, often perceived as wild and inhospitable, have once been a patchwork of cultivated fields, engineered waterways, and dense urban centers thriving in ways that challenge our assumptions about pre-Columbian life? Mainstream archaeology provides partial explanations. Evidence suggests that the societies responsible for these earthworks practiced intensive agriculture, utilizing raised fields to mitigate flooding, enrich soil, and increase crop yield. Complex hydrological networks controlled water flow and prevented erosion, demonstrating a deep understanding of the rainforest's environmental dynamics. Yet even with these insights, many questions remain. How did these societies maintain communication across such expansive, dense terrain? What social, political, or spiritual systems coordinated the construction, maintenance, and ritual use of these vast networks? And why did so much of this civilization vanish, leaving behind only fragmented traces, oral legends, and enigmatic earthworks? The discovery of these hidden cities has sparked speculation about the Amazon's historical significance. Some researchers propose that the region may have supported millions of inhabitants prior to European contact, challenging long-held assumptions about the rainforest's carrying capacity. The scale and organization of these sites suggest social hierarchies, ritual centers, and trade networks previously unimagined. Could the Amazon have been home to a civilization comparable in sophistication to the great city-states of Mesoamerica, or even to parts of the Mediterranean? And if so, why did this knowledge disappear, obscured by centuries of ecological change, disease, and colonial disruption? Fringe and speculative theories have flourished alongside empirical studies. Some suggest that the geometrical precision of the earthworks hints at astronomical, cosmological, or ritual significance, with plazas, mounds, and alignments oriented toward solstices, star patterns, or river flow. Others posit that these societies possessed unknown engineering methods, allowing them to manipulate the dense jungle environment in ways that remain mysterious. While these interpretations are not universally accepted, they underscore the enduring fascination these hidden cities inspire, and the sense that we have only begun to comprehend the complexity of human interaction with one of the world's most formidable landscapes. Artifacts recovered from these sites, though sparse due to decay, provide glimpses into daily life and belief. Pottery, tools, and ceremonial objects suggest rich cultural traditions, trade networks, and symbolic systems, but they leave more questions than answers. What rituals were performed in plazas now obscured by canopy? How did social cohesion and political authority manifest in settlements without the monumental stone edifices familiar from other civilizations? And how did these societies balance technological innovation with environmental stewardship, ensuring survival in a challenging ecosystem that modern observers often underestimate? The hidden cities also invite reflection on perception and observation. Much of the discovery process has relied on technology, particularly LiDAR, which can penetrate vegetation to reveal patterns invisible to the naked eye. This raises intriguing questions. How many more traces of human ingenuity lie concealed beneath the dense forests of the world? And how much do we misinterpret the past when we rely solely on visible monuments, written records, or artifacts that survive in isolation? The Amazon's hidden cities remind us that human history is layered, complex, and often concealed by time, nature, or circumstance. The cultural and spiritual significance of these sites adds further depth. Indigenous oral histories speak of settlements, sacred spaces, and pathways crisscrossing the forest, hinting at knowledge that was never fully recorded in written form. How much did memory, ritual, and oral tradition guide the construction and use of these earthworks? And how much might still lie buried beneath forest litter, waiting for the right combination of observation, patience, and technology to reveal it? Standing at the edge of one such geoglyph, the forest enveloping the horizon, one is struck by the interplay of human ingenuity and natural persistence. Trees and vines slowly reclaim earthworks. Rivers meander around former plazas. And yet, the underlying geometric precision remains, whispering of civilizations that once commanded attention, organization, and artistry across vast and challenging landscapes. These hidden cities, silent and patient, evoke both awe and humility, a reminder that human ambition and adaptation can leave traces that survive millennia, even in places where visibility is limited and memory has faded. The mystery endures. Why were these cities abandoned, and how did ecological, social, or disease-related pressures contribute to their disappearance? Could there be even larger networks hidden beneath uncharted forest that might dramatically reshape our understanding of pre-Columbian South America? And what can these hidden cities tell us about the resilience, intelligence, and vision of the peoples who once transformed the seemingly untamable Amazon into a living, thriving, and meticulously organized landscape? As we peer through breaks in the canopy, watching the sunlight play across mounds and terraces invisible from the forest floor, the Amazon's secrets remind us of the limits of perception and the endurance of mystery. The hidden cities are not just archaeological sites. They are challenges to our assumptions about civilization, environment, and human potential. They compel us to ask, how much of human history remains unseen, obscured not by time alone, but by nature itself? And what stories, achievements, and enigmas are waiting silently beneath the trees, rivers, and soil of the world's greatest rainforest, waiting for discovery, understanding, or contemplation? In the hidden cities of the Amazon, we confront a paradox of history. Immense human ingenuity entwined with nature's reclaiming force, knowledge lost yet partially preserved, and mysteries that continue to defy full explanation. They are a reminder that civilization, in all its ambition and complexity, is not solely the domain of stone and written record, but also of earth, water, and the careful observation of a people attuned to the rhythms of their environment. And they leave us with an enduring question. What else lies hidden, quietly shaping our understanding of the past, waiting for the curious, the patient, and the daring to find it?